Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show. Always happy to have you with us. Thursday edition of the show. Today will feature our guy, Gordy Chiesa, for an hour in studio. Gordy will then take a little sabbatical from the Sean O'Connell Show for, 8 weeks or so before basketball really gets rolling again. Ari Temkin, Big 12 insider, college football insider, going to join us at 1 o'clock as well. We've got lots to get to on the show today. We've got some sound from Camp Kyle, Utah football camp in earnest now. They're in real pads. You're starting to get the actual hitting, and your starters, they're established in a lot of places, but real football is what it takes to start figuring out the pecking order for position battles, and you're getting that now. Jerry Seiner Cadillac, S&S Roofing, America First Credit Union, Mountain Land, Advanced Window Products, Utah Toyota Dealers, Steel Vault, Ketos Brewing, Sound Warehouse, Culligan Water, Game Day Men's Health, Outlaw Distillery, Polylift, Big Willie's, Budweiser Beer Bar, Big O Tires, Baskin Robbins, and the Advocates are your Camp Kyle sponsors here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. The Sean O'Connell Show specifically is brought to you by our friends at Big Willie's. Go check out the lunch special they have every single day. It's either $14 or $15. It is a mountain of delicious craft food. And if you're so inclined, you can accompany that with a nice soft drink or perhaps an adult beverage, as long as your job allows it. 1717 South Main. Tell them OC sent you. Shoot some pool in the pool hall. They just refilled the tables. And watch whatever's on TV, which for us right now, ESPN on, we've got Little League World Series, Little League Softball World Series happening right now. So there's a lot going on. And when you're watching these young kids play sports, one of the things that you see is the Utah spellings of names they've gone outside the Utah borders. All right, maybe we're a little bit harsh on our own cultural stereotypes when people add unnecessary Y's and GH's and EIGH's to names. It's not just a Utah thing, apparently. Although it is very quintessentially Utah to have a normal name with an insane spelling for whatever the eighth kid in the family is. Anyway. We've been setting over-unders. We're going to do a start bench cut on Friday. I'm saving it specifically for the voice of the Utes, Bill Riley, who joins us on Fridays. He likes to participate in the start bench cut, so I'm saving start bench cut for tomorrow, and we'll wrap up the week with that. The over-unders that we've been focusing on have been offensive, and this is the one I told you this is going to be the most confounding one, the most difficult one. The most problematic one potentially, because you have to try to be a realist while also hoping for significant improvement. Now I've set all these numbers based on that principle. Be a realist, but hope for better things. Be a realist, but hope that things do improve. Don't set expectations that are unattainable, but by all means, feel like this Utah offense is going to perform better than they did last year. Now, some of the numbers from last year are banana sandwich. Some of them are just absolutely crazy. And some of the numbers are it's kind of surprising. I also realized my mistake in these over-unders that I've been setting. I did not put them in poll form. So we're just getting a little bit of feedback. 877-353-0700. Always love to hear from you at Real OC Sports. But in order to get the more general consensus of whether the fan base thinks that overs or unders are realistic or are possible, you gotta make it a one-click kind of a thing. You got to make it a low barrier to entry and path of least resistance type answer. So I did that. Now, I've gone back and I have pollified all of our over-unders so far. I've turned them into Twitter polls. So most of the questions are redundant, but I'm trying to make it easier for you to at Real OC Sports, go and answer so I can get a general sense of where the fan base sits on the numbers that I've set. The number for today, the first number for today, because we got a couple. The first number for today I want to talk about is one of the more unpleasant offensive numbers you can discuss. Everyone likes, how many passing touchdowns? How many rush yards per game? What's your leading rusher going to have this year? All that kind of stuff. Well, that's great. We enjoy that. What about interceptions thrown? The criticism, the question mark, hold on, let's pump the brakes a little bit on our excitement around Devin Dampier, who is legitimately one of the most dynamic and explosive players at the position in all of college football. With respect to everyone else, all the other signal callers, very few guys, I'm just talking about the numbers, very few guys out there are even capable of doing with their arm and their legs what Devin Dampier is capable of. Obviously, the legs portion of that is where he truly excels. If he can get his arm talent and his decision-making to catch up with, the not even the elite. I don't need somebody to be Drew Aller. Sam Levitt in the conference had a great touchdown-interception ratio at Arizona State last year, a big part of why they were so successful. If Devin can just split the difference, and instead of a 1-to-1, he can have a 1.5-to-1, I'd be thrilled with a 2-to-1 touchdown-to-interception ratio. And the number I set yesterday for touchdown passes was 23.5. A lot of people took the under, thinking it'd be somewhere between 20 and 24. Now the question is, what about the interceptions? Do we expect Devin Dampier, when he's better protected behind this offensive line, when he's more comfortable in the offense, to throw fewer interceptions this year than he did last year? He threw 12 last year, as all of you know. So 11.5 is the number I set it at. 11.5 interceptions thrown by the University of Utah. And, of course, our hope is that every interception thrown or not will be the starting quarterback, will be Devin Dampier. The number last year, I'll get to it in a second. The number last year sucked, but it certainly was partially a product of how many different quarterbacks played, because guys didn't get into a rhythm. Cam Rising threw interceptions because he was hurt. Isaac Wilson threw interceptions because he was hurt. Like, there's
and true freshman stuff too with Isaac Wilson.
Absolutely. Like, there's the number of quarterbacks you play and the amount of interceptions you throw, I would imagine has a pretty direct correlation, if not a causation.
Did the Ferrari throw a pick? Is he pickless for his career?
I believe that Luke Batari has the most decorated percentage numbers.
His touchdown interception ratio, if he indeed had a clean sheet as far as interceptions go, is the best in Utah football history.
Luke Batari, 2 games played in 2023, 7 for 11. Okay, he retires as a Ute. 5 games played, 63% completion percentage, 1 touchdown pass thrown, and you guessed it, 0 interceptions.
Look at that.
That's Ferrari numbers, baby.
I was going to do the vroom vroom sound. I'm glad you did instead of me.
All right. Also, 2 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah, against Colorado, right? Both of them in 23, right?
And let me see. I believe no fumbles.
Man.
So that's a man who gives you 3 touchdowns and no turnovers, baby. Woo! That's a ratio.
That is a ratio, my guy. You want a quarterback who's never going to turn the ball over and who's gonna throw or rush for multiple touchdowns? Not in a game, mind you, but over a career. I present to you the Ferrari. NFL, UFL, your move.
So, over 11.5 interceptions thrown, meaning you hit 12 at least. or under 11 and a half interceptions thrown.
So is Devin matching or exceeding his interception total from last year, or is he going under?
Now, the biggest thing here for me is that, yes, you're an experienced quarterback in this offense, but Devin does not have a long history with any of the targets that he's throwing to, which does matter when it comes to interceptions, which does matter when it comes to that nonverbal and verbal communication, when it comes to being on the same page with a receiver or with a tight end. That was one of the things that Cam Rising did a great job of, getting up to speed quickly with his guys. But let's remember that Cam Rising had a whole year on the team before he was expected to win a game. He was killing it on the scout team, and he was developing chemistry with guys in the locker room, behind the scenes, all that kind of stuff. Devin is a dude who has excelled in that regard, according to all reports. But there is no substitute for time. You can be the most friendly, charismatic, best leader. Hey, I really need you guys to get on the same page with me. And you still have to have time. And he's had very little time so far.
One thing I'll say that I think is a good sign. Now, of course, you can say whatever you want. It doesn't mean anything till we see it on the field. But you were there the day that they made him available, first day of fall camp, and he specifically shouted out his developing chemistry with Tobias Merriweather. No one asked him about that. He just offered it. And then yesterday we talked with Tobias, and someone asked him directly about it, but he said, yeah, the chemistry is really good with Devin. So I think that's a really good sign. And also, you got it was Ryan Adams. Is he the guy that was on the? Maybe I'm messing up his name. The Ryan Davis. Was he the guy that
was with New Mexico?
It was with New Mexico. So you got one target he's somewhat familiar with, and it sounds like he and Tobias got a good thing going in camp. Again, sounding like is much better than what it looks like, and what really matters is seeing them actually have that chemistry.
And I have no doubt that chemistry is developing, and it's probably developing at an accelerated rate because of who Devin is and because of how familiar he is with the offense. But again, experience matters. Time in a system just does matter. Like, you got to be comfortable with the people you're working with. I mean, James, you and I, like, we've gotten along since day one, but the more reps you get, the more natural it becomes. And that's just how it is probably in every job. Gordy Chiesa is going to be with us in about 15 minutes. He'll probably give us plenty of anecdotal stories about how, hey, wow, these guys got along great, but it actually took a year for them together before they really became the fullness or reached the fullness of their potential. So that could influence a higher interception number, right? Devin's familiarity and more experience, and this is my second year as the guy, really, even though it's my first year at this level being the guy. I know what it's like. I've seen the bullets live. I know exactly, or I have some approximation of the speed. And New Mexico did play Power 4 team last year, and he performed well.
Yeah, I mean, they played a Power 4 team, and they played, Wazoo's kind of in between, but had a lot of players left over from their final Pac-12 year. So he had some, and they played Oregon State last year too, but that different situation with Oregon State. But it was he has some experience against higher level teams than Mountain West, even though he played a Mountain West schedule. That's a great point. The other question mark is we've seen lots of success all over the nation with really talented quarterbacks who've transferred and then been awesome in their first year in a new place. But just because we have so many examples to point to does not mean that that's going to be the case for everybody. So that's the other thing that remains to be seen. We believe that he'll be able to adjust to a Big 12 schedule and a Power 4 schedule. They're playing UCLA right away in the season opener. But we don't know for sure that it might how much time it'll take for him to be like, whoa, this speed. He might have a little shell shock. Whoa, this speed's a little different at the Power 4 level. Who knows?
For those keeping score, by the way, Devin Dampier passing had 550-ish yards, 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions against Auburn and Arizona last year, who are the bona fide Power 4 teams that New Mexico played against, right? Against Arizona, he rushed for 15 carries, 130 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
He put up a lot of highlights in that game.
So he was very, very productive in that game. And actually against Auburn, it was one of the rare New Mexico games where he was not the leading rusher. It was Eli Sanders had 7 carries for 72 yards in that game. Devin still had 6 yards a carry, 5 carries for 31 yards. And a lot of that was because, they were down early and they didn't get to run the ball much against Auburn. You had to try to play from behind. And even in that case, shout out Eli Sanders. 10 yards a carry against an SEC team when you're at New Mexico, good on you, son. So 11.5, the over-under on 11.5 interceptions thrown for Devin Dampier. I'm trying to give you a broad strokes of what influences that number in a Utah uniform, right? Better protected this year, almost certainly. There's a 99.9% chance that Devin is going to have more time. He's going to be under less duress. He's going to have better throw windows. He's a short guy, so that does matter. And that should improve, right? So how much does that improve his interceptions number? Part of the reason, the flip side to the elusiveness coin and the fact that he didn't get sacked ever, was that he sometimes was trying to force the ball downfield in a dynamic play, and that ended up being an interception, right? So maybe 2 or 3 interceptions gone because of that. But are those subtracted interceptions maybe replaced by, well, you're also playing against much better defenses now. The defensive backs, the difference in defensive backs in this Big 12 and the defensive backs in last year's Mountain West Conference, it's a leap, man. It's not like high school to college leap. It's not college to the NFL leap. But when you're talking about the breadth of talent at a premium position in college football in the Big 12 versus the Mountain West Conference, every Mountain West Conference team that he faced last year that he was throwing against had, a guy, maybe 2 guys that were like, wow, that dude might get some reps at the University of Utah. That dude, that defensive back, that safety, that corner, that nickel, that guy is a really good player. Every team in the Mountain West Conference had 1. Some had 3. Some had 2. In the Big 12 Conference, everyone's got 5. Everyone's got at least 3 or 4.
You've got
every starter.
You've got your starters, and you've got a couple of guys on the bench.
Every starter at the Big 12 level is that one dude that you were just able to avoid in the Mountain West Conference. Every starter in the Big 12. So where last year you were probably, Coach Beck and Devin were probably able to sit down in a couple of situations and just be like, hey, this Ike Larson kid at Utah State, don't try and throw at him, okay?
Throw at the other guys.
Just like wherever he's at, just go somewhere else because he's a playmaker. And you're like, all right, cool. I will avoid that. And I will, in my, whatever it was, 40 dropbacks, I will say, all right, where's number X? And I'll just go somewhere else. Or where's number 11 and where's number 28? Those guys are the ones that I need to look off. Those are the ones that I need to fool a little bit. And this other dude, we can pick on him. I mean, even at the Power 5 level, even in the Big 12, even in the SEC, right? You got guys that are not the equal of the dude on their own team. You've got guys that are the weakest link in that chain. Every team has them. You got to find them if you're a good coach. Even really great teams, even a strong chain has a weak link somewhere. It's not very weak, but it's the weakest of those links.
It's relatively weak. It's not actually weak.
So instead of being like, all right, well, we're going to find the pretty obvious weakness in this Mountain West Conference defensive backfield, now you got to find the relative weaknesses in a Big 12 defensive backfield, right? And sometimes If a defensive backfield is really good, it means, okay, now we got to exploit the relative weakness of those linebackers. Against a team like BYU, it's going to be the opposite of that. Like, BYU's linebackers are probably good enough that those crossing routes in that 5 to 11 yard range, those are going to be a little bit harder to come by against a team like that. Same is probably true with Kansas State. Same is probably true with Texas Tech. And by the way, you're not going to have much time with all the money spent on pass rush by Texas Tech, right? So you're going to make these adjustments, but you do have to make the adjustments. And the quarterback is the guy that has to make the adjustments. The coaching staff is going to do their damnedest to put him in positions for success, but he's the dude who either pulls the trigger on the throw or progresses to the next one and then pulls the trigger there or keeps working down the route tree until he says, oh, guess what? I went through read number 1, read number 2, read number 3, and nobody's open. I better get my booty moving and try to pick something up with my legs, get down to the pylon, get out of bounds, save myself for another down. He has to make those kinds of decisions, and he's got to do it against better defenses, faster defenses, smarter defenses with bigger, longer, rangier guys who, by the way, are going to be a little bit more clever also. We talk about the athletic differences between the levels, between the tiers of college football. And we were reading our freaks list yesterday, and those are significant, all right? I can tell you this because I played at the FCS level. I was on the team at the FBS level when Utah was a Mountain West Conference team, right? And when you are on the field covering games, not practicing or playing, but when you're down there on field level and you see where Utah is now in the Pac-12 and the Big 12, there are levels. And it's just a reality. The bodies are bigger. They move just as fast. And the thing we don't talk about because it's harder to measure is those guys are oftentimes, those bigger, faster guys are also oftentimes more instinctual, better educated football players. They're more complete products, right? So Devin is going to be up against much better defenses than he saw week in and week out in the Mountain West Conference. And what have we said since Utah made the transition, and then when BYU had to do the same thing, going from an independent schedule where it was like, hey, man, you have like 4 or 5 games a year that Tom Holmoe put together that are bona fide, big-time Power 4 games, Power 5 at the time games. And then you have a bunch of built-in wins because you got to fill in UMass at the end of the year, and you got to play a couple Mountain West Conference teams. Like, we talk about it all the time. The biggest difference is the week in and the week out. Devin Dampier is the guy that when it's New Mexico versus Boise State, it's New Mexico versus Arizona, it's New Mexico versus Auburn, and those are the 3 tough games on your schedule, you can be like, all right, man, I believe you're going to be crazy productive. I just gave you his numbers against Auburn. The team sucked. New Mexico wasn't good, all right? Auburn wasn't that good either. But what you saw, he was a productive player. He had big numbers as a runner and as a thrower. He did well against Auburn, right? He's got to do that every single week. And he threw, like I said, 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions against Arizona and against Auburn. Those were the numbers. 550 yards of passing-ish. What did we come out to? It was like 180 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. So he accounted for 6 touchdowns and 3 turnovers against Division I Power 4 talent last year. Is that going to be a realistic target, a realistic number? Everyone looks at the touchdown to interception ratio. We had someone text this in last week. It's actually probably more relevant to look at his touchdown to turnover ratio. He didn't fumble the ball a lot. And while he didn't throw as many touchdown passes, he scored a hell of a lot of touchdown runs. So if you look at his touchdown to turnover ratio at New Mexico, that's a much sexier number. But we're talking about interceptions right now, and we set the over-under at 11.5. Last year, he touched the over. He threw 12. This year, will he throw fewer? Can you get by if he throws just as many? Tell me what you think, 877-353-0700. And to put it in context, where would you sit if you hit that over or you hit that under? If you're at that Mason-Dixon line
Let
in
me
the
guess,
Big 12
right
Conference?
in the middle.
Well, James, I'm glad you asked. If you hit the over, meaning you hit 12, you would have tied Kansas for 10th in the conference. If you're at 11, you're in a four-way tie at number 7 in the conference.
So just right there in the middle.
Right there in the middle.
Isn't that wild how all of these, improving on all of these numbers brings Utah right to the middle? It speaks to just how bad the offense was to know that this much of an improvement we're talking about one interception improvement with this. That's not that big of a deal. But in these other ones, there were much more significant improvement in these other numbers you set for over-unders, and it's only getting you to the middle.
Yeah.
Like
like the touchdown passes, you got to throw 4 more touchdown passes to get to the middle. You got to throw the same number of interceptions with a barrier or a margin of 1 to be in the middle of the conference. But again, we saw how close some of Utah's games were last year. One possession games in what we decided was 5 different games. That if one possession ends in a touchdown instead of a punt
or a missed field goal or
a missed
field goal at all, yeah,
you're now a 10-win team.
Yep.
That's a huge difference. The margin for error is incredibly thin in a conference with a lot of parity. Arizona State led the conference in their touchdown to interception ratio, 26 passing touchdowns. They threw 6 interceptions last year. I haven't looked to see if anyone besides Leavitt threw. I think it was Leavitt who threw all 6 interceptions. Arizona State was first with 6. Cincinnati had 7. And then it was Colorado, Baylor, Iowa State, Kansas State who threw 10. Then, as I mentioned, there was a 3-way tie. TCU, Texas Tech, UCF with 11. Kansas stood alone at number 10 with 12 interceptions, matching Devin Dampier's New Mexico total. Arizona had 13, good enough for alone at 11th. BYU threw 14 interceptions. They tied West Virginia for 12th. And then there was a 3-way tie at the bottom. Oklahoma State, Utah, and Houston all threw 17 interceptions last year. So it would be a 5-interception improvement for Utah, even if they hit the over at 12. If you go with the under, that's a 6-turnover improvement. That is potentially season-changing.
Absolutely.
So I know there have been a lot of people, and I've been saving this conversation, there have been a lot of people, that's the thing they wring their hands about, and that's what makes them sweaty about Devin Dampier. I don't know, man. He doesn't take care of the ball all that well in the passing game, 12 interceptions. You would have given your left eye for only 12 interceptions thrown by Utah football last year. When you actually look at the numbers, I'm not going to demand that Devin Dampier reduces his interceptions this year. I don't even care if he does. I need him to increase his passing touchdown production. And if he, in that effort, if he has to be a little bit of a gunslinger and he still throws 12, that puts you right in the middle. And all this Utah offense needs to be in the passing game is right in the middle of the Big 12 Conference. The wins above replacement on that. We've looked at the numbers. Now, for a week straight, we've looked at the numbers in so many different ways, from so many different angles. If you can get to the middle, realistically, we're talking about a 9 or 10 win season.
I think that also speaks to just how good Utah's defense was last season and how good we expect them to be this season, because they're always good, right?
And look, there are some question marks about the defense that we will address. Next week, we're going to dive into the over-unders on the defensive side of the football, and we're going to, hopefully not make anybody too nervous about that. But today's first over-under, 11.5 interceptions thrown by Utah's offense, and ostensibly that is Devin Dampier. Over 11.5 or under 11.5. At Real OC Sports, if you want to weigh in on the Twitter poll, it is just a poll now. And then 877-353-0700 if you want to tell me what you think. Flesh out your thoughts a little bit more. I love when you tell me why you come to the answer that you come to. All right, we got to take a quick one here. We'll switch gears a little bit, talk about the goings-on of the association. Gordy Chiesa is here in studio with me. for the next hour on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. Welcome in our friend and NBA guru, Gordy Chiesa, longtime coach in the association. One of the great minds we get to pick about basketball all the time. Gordy, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Sean, I'm doing fine. Thank you. I'm looking forward to the NFL season and my beloved 49ers and my other team back east, Sean. I'm a tortured soul, the New York Jets.
Yes.
So
you and I share an affection for the San Francisco 49ers, so we'll stay positive on that. I can't give you any positivity about the Jets.
Yeah, the Jets. To be a Jet fan is almost like torture. But Sean, for the last 50 years now, we're not talking like 20, 14. We're talking 50. So
yeah, in my lifetime, they've never been great. So
yeah.
All right, you were arriving and hearing me talk about that point I was making with Devin Dampier. We're optimistic. I mean, I'm over the moon about the potential, right? And basketball's a different game, but there are plenty of similarities where a quarterback and his receivers, a quarterback and his offensive line, his running backs, you got to get on the same page with receivers, especially because so much is associated with timing and with, both of you getting the same read from the defense. That will determine which way the receiver breaks, if the throw is going to be on time. The QB sometimes has to have the ball out of his hand before the break actually happens. That same page thing can lead to turnovers or not. It can change a touchdown to a turnover and vice versa. And it requires time. It requires reps. And I know that the same is true, or I assume that the same is true in basketball. And I thought you would probably have a decent example or two of, even when the chemistry is good, where it just takes time and it just takes, practice hours or practice reps or whatever to get truly to where you need to be.
Very much. The first thing is those reps are at game speed. And the second thing is that when you're a smart passer, in other words, in the NFL, it'll be a quarterback, and college football, a QB. But in basketball, most times, it's a point guard traditionally, or the guys on perimeter that make plays for each other. So add to that, you ask the receiver as the weeks go on, where do you like the ball to be caught? Is in a shooting pocket? Is your right hand? Is your left hand? Like, just generally speaking, where do you feel more comfortable when the ball is being placed to you? And that's to emphasize placed. And that you get chemistry by talking with each other as far as off the court, but on the court, you get it by playing the game. See, the problem right now in this generation where teams dramatically less practice. And so there's slippage during the season. So a lot of times at the beginning of the year, you're much more crisper as far as your offense. But as the dog days of after the All-Star break, we'll say March 1st, generally speaking, the better teams accelerate as far as their execution, and the lesser teams deteriorate. And so a lot of it's based on what? As far as on-time, on-target passes, turnovers that are self-inflicted. And so it has to be by the players on perimeter that they keep talking to their receivers. Emphasize again, receiver. Just like in football, when you cut in, you're a baseline cutter in basketball, you're a catch receiver. And that your hands above your waist all the time. And that what you want to do is be able to catch the ball in the same rhythm with your footwork. So your footwork and your hands play in harmony into what? Your shooting stroke. So it's critical. You've got to play the game at a high speed. Then add to it, the last point about this is that add to it, oh, by the way, you're going to get bumped on the catch. Getting hit in a sporting event is perfectly normal. It's normal. So it's your lucky day when you catch the ball, I call it in a tuxedo, where no one's bothering you. Most times, the better the defense, the more physicality. And that's where you're able to catch and be able to use your hands, and also to get free. So chemistry starts in the locker room, off the court, but accelerated on the court with quality speed reps.
We talk all the time in football about that catching with contact, catching a contested ball, the alligator arms when people go over the middle and they don't want to reach out because you hear the footsteps coming. Is there an equivalent to that in NBA basketball where a guy is just bad when it comes to catching the contested pass?
Oh, very much. The answer, they're afraid to what? They're concerned about getting hit, but also they're playing too fast. In other words, they're thinking about what they're doing next before the ball's even caught. So we always talk, just like in football, you want to see the ball through your hands. See the ball through your hands and then make the correct read. And by the way, that read's going to be at full speed. Now the question is, how can I make the catch in speed, but make a decision, what? In slow pause. See, slow pause. So I catch speed-wise, but I decide in a slow pause. And generally speaking, the expression, like, for saying quarterback, definitely, is that the game slows down when you're more experienced as far as reps. Just like in basketball, when you're a scorer, the game slows down. So we also, in the NBA Finals, how for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the game slowed down for him. He was able to have this unbelievable acrobatic game, but still what? Playing the control. And Jalen Williams, the guy from Santa Clara, is a fourth-year player. the same way he did. The game slowed down. So it's a process. It's always painful. Just don't make it fatal.
I want to talk about the return of one of the beloved Jazz men. George Niang is back in this Jazz uniform. And, we've been talking about it the last couple of days, I guess, the minivan, the reputation of being a great teammate and all that kind of stuff. Everyone stops short when you're praising George Niang of saying, like, he's actually also a really good basketball player. Who is George Niang as an actual basketball player? Everybody loves him, but on the floor, what is he?
He's a knockdown shooter, 39.9 from threes. When his feet are set in that corner, Sean, you feel really, real good about that shot in the air. And so he's a knockdown shooter on a pick and roll, pick and pop. He's able to make that open jump shot. Defensively, even though he's a step slow, which is perfectly normal for most guys in the NBA, but he has an alertness and he wants to do the right thing. So he's a better team defender than individually, both on off ball. What he gives the Jazz is a guy that's he turns 29 on October 28th of this year. He's a veteran that has a good personality. He's a knockdown shooter, and the players will listen to him. Economically, Sean, his contract is only 1 year, and so it's $8.2 million. So it's going to work out, certainly. But just say for the narrative, after 1 year, the Jazz can move him on as far as his contract, or in the trading deadline, very much where a playoff-type team would want him because there's a finish line on his contract. So he's an absolutely valuable asset in the short term, but also throughout the season because people like him. How about George Niang? Now, don't feel sorry for him, but he was traded 3 times since the trade deadline. 3 times already, and
wow.
Twice this summer. So, Sean, the learning point about this, by the way, do not buy a house. Do not buy a house. Do not buy a condo. Rent. So, George, if I'm talking to you right now as a colleague, I would rent right now because of your the last year or so. Now, again, he makes $8.2 million. You can't feel sorry. I get it. However, remember, these people are human beings. They are. They have families. And that, it's traumatic uplifting your family to move or be away from them for X amount of time. So it's all part of being a professional player. And the better players understand it, and they grow in it.
In general, do guys that are in this sort of journeyman category, do they like going back to a place that they're familiar with, or are they, more looking forward to seeing, a new market, living in because George seemed to like Salt Lake City, and he was embraced here and respected here and things like that. I imagine when the call came like, hey, we're trading you, you're going to the Jazz, seems like he would have had a positive reaction, but you've been around way more of these trades than I ever will be.
It's positive, yeah, because he knows the area. He knows some of his teammates that were here, and more. He knows the head coach. He knows management. So it's a much fluid. And remember now, Austin Ainge was there in Boston when he was there. So the guy that runs the Jazz right now, Austin Ainge, was George Niang, knows him personally too, as far as being a former Celtic. So remember now, so George Niang went from Atlanta to Cleveland, Cleveland to Boston, Boston now to the Jazz in the last year or so. So it's good. I like George Niang. He brings the Jazz a shooting threat, and just generally speaking, he plays to win.
What kind of locker room presence will he be expected to have with this group of young guys? He's one of the veterans on this team, but the more natural leadership role belongs to obvious starters, belongs to elite level players, belongs to a Lauri Markkanen. Still, for a George Niang, I imagine he can offer some helpful advice to the young guys.
Yeah, very much. Young guys would be Kyle Filipowski. So that's the guy that he's going to probably mentor, and also with, I would say, even Ace Bailey, definitely. So remember, also, Jazz have Kyle Anderson there, too. So Kyle Anderson is the same sort of role where George is 29. I mentioned October 28th. Kyle's 31. So these are guys that they still can play. Remember now, the players respect you and listen to you only if you can still play. If you can't play, they don't respect you. So that's why it's so important that when from day one in practice is that you get after the younger guys and say to them, hey, you might be the future, but by the way, I can still play. But let me help you become a better player early in your career by doing 1, 2, 3, what I've learned 8 years ago when I was a rookie like you, like a young fella. So it's important. Now, the question in jazz basketball is, who is the leader? Larry Markin is an absolutely tremendous player, but he's a quiet personality, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So the Jazz, the leader should be, I'm pausing for a second, besides the guys he's traded for, it should be Keontae George and Isaiah Collier, because they're going to have the ball in the game. And so they're both young people. Are they ready for that challenge? Let's watch.
We got Gordy Chiesa here in studio with us. We'll take a quick one. We're talking about basketball right now, but you're probably thinking about golf as the weekend approaches. If you haven't checked out the Stansbury Park Golf Course yet, now is the time. Tooele County's historic golf course, great for a reason. The combination of challenge, pace, and for a lot of us, this is very important, price. It really meets the Goldilocks zone on all of those. There's a water trap on almost every hole. The greens, very well kept. They replace they mix it up with the hole placement. The layout keeps you focused, and you got to be fired up. It's the perfect course to go out there with your friends, because you're going to have like 7 awesome holes, and in that 7 holes that you have that are great, you're going to have in your foursome, you're going to have 3 guys that spray it into the water, and you get to talk a little bit of trash. And then on hole number 8, it's probably your turn to take the medicine. It's the perfect course to golf with your buddies. There's no long waits. There's no overpriced green fees. It's pure golf. 18 holes are $45 during the week, $50 on weekends, right off I-80 out in Tooele County. Go check out Stansbury Park Golf Course, stansburypark.gov/golf course. Book your tee time right now. That's stansburypark.gov/golf course. All right, lots more to discuss with Gordy Chiesa, including the rumblings around the Greek Freak, Giannis Antetokounmpo. There still seems to be a lot of folks wondering what his future looks like with Milwaukee. We'll touch on that next and much more on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Sean O'Connell Show continues with Gordy Chiesa here in studio.
Sean, remember, Sean, you and I were together the day that Prince passed away. And I remember you and I were talking about Prince. And, we had a very deep discussion about Prince the day he passed away.
How long has he been gone now?
I want to say, Sean, I'm guessing, all right, 9 years. I'm guessing 9.
You are absolutely correct.
Okay, I was just
April
guessing.
21st, 2016 is when Prince passed away.
Well, that day we were together.
Gordy's got a mind like a steel trap for all of you who probably have figured that out. Even obscure facts like how long Prince has been gone.
Well, 1999 was written, Sean, in 1982. In case you're wondering. I remember I was at basketball camp with these crazy guys. I'll leave it at that. Crazy guys at basketball camp in 82. And this song came on, the quote, the jukebox. What's a jukebox? Gordy, what are you talking about?
I love going to a place that has an old-fashioned jukebox, man.
So I remember these crazy guys putting in the quarters and playing the song. So that's just
I think now it costs like $2.50 to request a song on a jukebox.
Okay.
You got to do a credit card probably, but the old school ones are awesome.
This is the quarter.
By the way, if you're not watching on YouTube, ESPN 700 Sports Utah, you're really missing out on the fashion of Gordy Chiesa today. He's got an old school, like a very simple but awesome old Jazz shirt. It's an embroidered Jazz logo up on the kind of the left breast pocket, no pocket though, in a copper thread. It's just awesome. And Gordy, you told us that's been in your closet for like 25 years.
Yeah, 25 years, yeah. I found it 25 years. I have a lot of emphasized junk in my closet. And remember, Sean, you know about junk. One person's junk, someone else's treasure. In case you're just saying, Sean.
Well, if you ever wanted to, you could probably sell off a lot of your vintage Jazz gear for a pretty penny because that's what the young hipsters are into these days. They love the vintage stuff.
We all do. No, the answer
I'll
is...
take it off your hands, Gordy, if you ever need someone to.
James, you're not allowed to steal Gordy's shirt.
Really, I didn't realize that I'm such a great fashion statement. Me of all people, I'm laughing.
He's a style icon, Gordy Chiesa.
I didn't realize that.
We were talking during the break about what I talked about going into the break. Giannis Antetokounmpo, Shams Charania keeps saying like, "Hey guys, we don't know what his future is going to be," and your thought on that was, well, share your thought on the uncertainty around the Greek Freak's future.
Just play. My thing about just play. Don't worry about anything else. That you're an elite talent that's fell short in the playoffs, even though back in 2021 you were world champions. However, in professional sports, it's a short memory. What have you done for us recently? And recently now is 4 years already. And so if I was counseling him thoroughly, I would just say just play. And that his contract is right in place. He makes this year $54.1 million, 26-27, $58.4 million, 27-28, $62.7 million. So what is the problem here? That the franchise, the Bucks, they've invested in you as a once-in-a-lifetime generational talent, which you are, but help your team get past the first round, which have been knocked out by the Pacers, ironically, Sean, back-to-back seasons. They have a good roster. It's somewhat aging, but they feel that their future is the present tense right now, and so they're all in as far as trying to advance. But so they've got to. Giannis has got to. He's right now. He's in the European Championships as far as they call Eurobasket. He's over in Greece right now, and sometimes when you're in native country, you let it all hang down your hair.
If you're on a coaching staff, are you concerned about like those like a Eurobasket stint for someone like Giannis?
Oh yeah, very much. Yeah, yes, you are. Is that besides talking to the European media, is that you're always hesitant. You have to have the player play for their national team. You have to, so you can't stop that. Minus the guy who was injured beforehand. So, but you always are very hesitant about it because your franchise is the main focal point for that player, even though he loves his native country. So again, in jazz basketball, we used to have Karolinko, who obviously he loved Mother Russia, and he played for their team all the time. And so, and then Larry Markin in present tense plays for Finland in the European. They call it the Eurobaskets. He's playing in Finland as far as against other European teams. So it's a big thing. There's 24 teams that are in Europe right now that are playing for the championship. It takes about 3.5 weeks, and then they're the champion of Europe.
My favorite thing is when a European player, gets called away to do the mandatory military service that exists for young men in a lot of those countries.
Yes.
And you hear about some professional athlete making $40 million a year, and he's got to go do his National Guard duty or whatever. I love that. I love those stories.
Well, that was Larry Markin 2 years ago with Finland. He served in the military, and for the Israeli players, where it's mandatory, both men and women serve in Israel military service for 2 years. Usually speaking, it's when you're generally speaking, most times it's 20 years old. Most times. Okay, there you go.
Jantanen, the former Ute Jantanen, the same thing. James whispering. I don't know if you put that on air or not.
No. So I don't know if he's done his military service yet. Sorry, you were talking about the Finnish national team, Larry Markkinen. I thought we should shout out former running Ute Mikki Jantanen is on that Finnish national team as well.
Sure, and it's all part of it. So that's their country. America is their second country, and so when they're with some of their teammates growing up, as far as in a European under-14 championships, the Euro under-17, Euro under-20 championships. Now these guys are in the NBA or other professional sports. They unite in their country to represent them. Showing the most intense game ever that I've heard about, including Jazz Bulls 1998 and Flag Day, was when Lithuania for the first time played against Russia. When Lithuania was part of Russia in the early 1990s, they played Russia for the bronze medal in the Olympics, and it was an overtime game, and literally the whole Lithuanian population literally watched that game because they had so much pride when Lithuania beat Russia for the bronze medal game in the 1992 championships. It was an overtime, matter of fact. So it was absolutely incredible. People tell me it was the most intense game they've ever seen in a game.
It's hard to contextualize European fandom when when you haven't been to a live event in Europe or whatever. The sports fans there, I don't know if it's because of the pre-gaming. I don't know what it is, but sports fans in Europe, I'm a very patriotic person, but they do it better in a lot of cases. They're just so rabid about even some obscure sports. It's pretty awesome going to sporting events in Europe.
And that's why it's so important, the Olympics, that we saw last year how those sports, the other sports that really aren't in the Americans' lexicon as far as, these different sports. But in Europe, it's absolutely huge. Other parts of the world. And that's why it's so important to respect. These people are world-class athletes, and we're going to see it in 2028 in L.A., which will be coming out party of a lot of different people. I can't wait I know it's a long time off as far as the ebbs and flow of sports. But, Sean, speaking of the ebbs and flows, I want to discuss and get your opinion about some of these things as far as why good teams stop winning.
Yeah.
Why good teams stop winning.
I wanted to save that for this upcoming segment because Gordy came in and he said, listen, let's have this discussion on the show today. And we've got 28 minutes left with Gordy. So we're going to flesh this out. Why do good teams stop winning? Yes, we'll focus on the NBA side of it, but of course you can extrapolate it to, well, I don't know, maybe even Utah football these last couple of seasons. We'll get into it on the Sean O'Connell Show. It's ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. Welcome to hour number 2 on the Sean O'Connell Show. We got Gordy Chiesa for another 25-ish minutes here. And he came into the studio with something on his mind today. Why do good teams stop winning? The layers to this onion can go deeper and deeper, but let's start with where you want to start, Gordy. Why do good teams in the NBA stop winning?
Marginal college drafts. So the first thing is that usually back-to-back years, the draft was marginal. And so that's the first thing. So you didn't get young guys into your organization that were able to win. The second thing is that you didn't retain the younger free agents. So you have some free agents that are on your team that are 20-something years old, say 24, 25. You didn't retain some of them. Erratic player development, where you draft these young guys, they're underskilled, even though they're ultra athletic, but their skill level is what? Subpar. And it's very slow, erratic on it. You sign free agents, so the acquisition of free agents are a bad fit. They're a bad fit. Next one. The older veterans lose their work ethic. So the guy, again, in, say, basketball, the player is roughly around, give or take, 33 years old, and he loses his work ethic where he's still on the team under contract, but not the same, let's bust it out in practice. Let me work on my skills. Let me work on the physical part of it and the mental and nutritional, eating correctly. There's a slippage on it.
How often is that related to a contract? We talk about it in football all the time, and there's plenty of examples where a guy gets paid and that becomes a demotivating factor rather than the thing that pushes them to the next level, which of course is what the team hopes for when you give someone this $60 million, $70 million, $100 million contract, and then he just shows up to the next training camp out of shape, et cetera. The numbers in the NBA are more inflated than anywhere else. How often is that lack of commitment that you're talking about related to a contract?
Often. Yeah, often. The answer is absolutely often. It's case by case. A lot of it's based on your personality and your individual pride. That when you're really a person with character, when someone gives you something, you want to pay them back more so by performing even more better, even more diligent about it versus the other direction, where there's a lack of character where I got paid now and now I can slack off. And it happens in every sport, especially in basketball. Your point is well taken. The numbers are so inflated. Again, I talk like $60 million contracts, like it's every day, which it is. As a matter of fact,
it is every day in the NBA.
It's every day. So when I say that, I cringe. My voice is cringing. So you described there a guy that's 28, 29 years old. He retired on his teammates without telling them that he retired. What an awful feeling that your teammates are playing to win and you're playing to what? Skate along. Next part about that is management and head coaches. There's eternal feuding over the roster. So the head coach and management is feuding internally, not publicly,
sure,
but internally, where the management wants to have this guy on the team, or without saying it, I think you should play this guy more minutes, and the head coach doesn't agree with that. So there's feuding. So, you know, expression in layman's term, oh, by the way, they're not on the same page. That's what happens. Next one. The team, why they're losing is that they did lack of bench strength, where management didn't give enough players as far as winning bench players, or the coach didn't play at the unit as a bench. We saw that in the NBA right now, 2 months ago, with Tom Thibodeau. The 5 starters played literally almost the whole game, and there was a lack of bench.
Yeah.
But for Knickerbocker, so they fell slightly short.
Much to the chagrin of Utah fans, because DeLon Wright was on that bench, and a lot of us thought that he could help that team.
Add to that. And so DeLon Wright, when Jalen Brunson was hurt with a sprained ankle, he played wonderful. He had an 8-game stretch where he played 20 minutes a game. He was really good. And so DeLon Wright, just Sean's point, is that he's a free agent right now. If I'm a good team in the NBA, I want DeLon Wright on my group as a second unit defensive playmaker.
Sure.
Off the bench, causing havoc, making enough open jump shots on it. Just quickly, the last point about this is the number 8 would be court tilt. On the roster, there's too many extreme offensive-minded players with way too many few two-way players, both offense and defense. And so that's why good teams fall apart. It could be only 5 of these reasons. It could be too top heavy. It could be many reasons. But generally speaking, these are the reasons why. Most times when teams are good and they don't win, we call it court tilt. The court is tilted on one direction, where it's too much offense or too much defense. Mm-hmm. We saw the Thunder this past year. They're number 1 team in defense in the NBA, and by the way, they're in the top 5 offensively. That's why they're champions, and that's why the Pacers also. So think about the Pacers; they overachieved. This is the opposite the Pacers have: is that most of those guys on the Pacer team, they're direct opposite because the pieces fit. They play as a unit. They have tremendous bench strength right now. Player development program. They retain the younger free agents, etc. You fill the blanks in. How about the NFL?
Well, in the NFL, the point that you were making, as I'm listening to that, point after point after point, they're all roster points. It is all, and every coach tells you, it's not X's and O's, it's Jimmy's and Joe's. But good teams don't stop winning because everyone else figures out their scheme. Good teams don't stop winning because suddenly the rest of the league catches up to them on the X's and O's. It's a roster construction thing. How often can you see it coming, Gordy? Because you've been around the game for a long time, and when you see some of these moves, and you'll be like, oh, well, that falls into point number X, whatever. Like that's a guy who's too offensively focused. They've already got too many offensively focused guys. Now that's going to be a court tilt problem for this team, because I imagine you see it coming before the rest of us do.
I do, and that's why it's so important to try to have a balanced roster. That, again, your main guys have to be two-way players, especially in the playoffs, minimum in the fourth quarter. So philosophically, is that are our 3 best players on our team better than the other 3 best players on the opposing as rivals in a playoff game, especially in the fourth quarter in games of 5, 6, and 7. And usually speaking, when your team has those 3 better players that play both sides of the ball, the rest of the other players on the court, they're going to overachieve. And I just described again the Thunder. I described the Pacers. I described all the teams. The Denver Nuggets, they overachieved this year. They have Sean. The Nuggets have court tilt, but Jokic is so brilliant as far as way he plays, is that he's able to focus on the court where it's not as dramatic, even though it should be. So think about the Denver Nuggets. They have no bench.
Uh-huh.
Yet they took the Thunder, world champions, to 7 games.
And they had already fired their head coach.
That's correct, right? So just think of, and so this is where there's always one outlier.
Okay, I'm just thinking, okay, so my next question to you is going to be, based on what we just talked about, what's a good team that's going to stop winning? And that's a team with court tilt problems. That's a team with the front office / coaching, discord. That's they check at least a couple of those boxes. Are the Nuggets a good team that's going to stop winning?
The answer is they did last year, but this year they corrected it. So to their credit right now, what they did, they added Tim Hardaway Jr., offensive minded off the bench. They added Bruce Brown, a 2-way player off the bench. So they added Cam Johnson, an open shooter, and replaced instead of Michael Porter, who's one-dimensional. And then they added Valanciunas, who's a Lithuanian bully. And so what they did, the Nuggets, to their credit, they absolutely improved their bench. And so it gives now the Denver Nuggets a fighting chance to go deeper in the playoffs. Because, again, it's an awful feeling. You don't want to waste somebody that's a once-in-a-lifetime player named Nikola Jokic with a roster that's going to fall short. So the Nuggets, to their credit, management group, they did a wonderful job with their team.
So when we talk about teams, on the rise, you think of what Orlando looks like right now. You think of San Antonio. The Jazz want to be in that category sooner than later, although it's probably going to take a little bit of time. For any team on the rise to break through, it means that a decent team, at least, or a good team, has to stop winning, has to fall. If you're going to leapfrog somebody, it means you got to be better, but they probably also have to be worse. So of last year's NBA playoff teams, or the teams that you considered to be a good team, who is most at risk for stopping on the positive momentum? Who's going to stop winning, Gordy?
The Bucks and the Knicks and the Celtics because of injuries.
Okay.
Those three right there in the East. In the West, it would be the Grizzlies, the Suns, and the Kings. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see.
But you could see, so OKC, Houston, LA, Denver, other LA, even the Timberwolves, they're going to be able to sustain this for a little while.
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Yeah. The answer is yes. Yes, they are. Because they have good players that are in their prime, and most of those teams have a point guard that can steady the ship during the game. And as I always talk about this, even though now in this generation there's no more, quote, old school point guards minus Chris Paul type guys, but you have to have a point guard in a game in the fourth quarter that steadies the group right now, and that they're very conscious. You see, Sean, point guard isn't a position, it's a mentality. It's a mentality where my floor mate is struggling during a game. I'm the point guard of our group, whether it's starter or the backup point guard. How can I help this guy get some shots to get himself going because he's ultra talented? He's having mental amnesia right now. He has an element of doubt, even though he's fearless as a player. But it's a doubt right now. The defense is overwhelming him. How can I get him ball? You mentioned earlier about receiving on time, on target. So every good team I mentioned that's going to be champions has a point guard or a guard on perimeter that is wants to get his teammates involved. So that's why people say, well, in the NBA it's positionless. Until what? In a playoff game in the fourth quarter. See, again, people say things you just say it out loud. Okay, that's true. Yeah, that's true. No, it's not. That's not true. In the fourth quarter, I can assure you. And sometimes the point guard is a big guy. So to Denver, it's Jokic.
Sure.
It's Jokic. It's LeBron a lot of times. It's not always a smaller guy, but you have to have somebody that is willing to get someone else a shot because they know that this is dynamics, this is chemistry.
How much control does a coaching staff have in today's NBA on things like that? Because you do have to contend sometimes, or hopefully you're working in conjunction with your front office, with the more seasoned leadership on your team. Some of those guys now have decision-making power almost at the team and roster level, right? Like LeBron James runs every organization he's a part of, it would seem. So for a coaching staff, how much control do you have over what we're just talking about with, the team chemistry, the willingness of a particular player to accept the role, especially an important role, when maybe that's not what they envision themselves as a player? The power imbalance that happens in college sports is starting to even out. It's always been less significant in professional basketball. I would make the argument that in the NBA, the power imbalance favors the players, the superstar players, in a lot of cases where it makes it incredibly challenging for coaches. But again, you have been in these rooms during these discussions. You have played this role, sometimes with players who have massive, massive egos. So what level of control does a coaching staff have?
A whole bunch. With the winning teams, the lesser teams, it's dramatically lower, and that's why the teams win. And so what you want to do is that to win in the NBA, to win in the NFL, you have to let the star players be stars because they have an elite talent. But within that, you've got to get the star players to play as a unit. So in basketball, we always talk about we want to showcase your unbelievable individual skills, but let's do this after what? Ball movement first. Let's do it off of screening action. Let's get the ball to you in space, on time, on the second side of the floor. Versus what? The top of the circle where the defense can stare right now at you, and it's going to limit you. And then most times, Giannis-type people will take an off-balance jump shot because the defense now, the help defense is locked in, and when the shots miss, a lot of times they blame your teammates to get in my way. And so the way we teach the guys is trust us. We'll get the ball to you in time, on target, usually on the second side of the floor after ball movement. So is that the better coaches in the NBA, they have discipline. And discipline is everything. And I don't mean crazy discipline. I mean where you use bad words every single minute of practice. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying is that there's a high element of trust, and that the discipline that we're playing as a unit. Usually speaking, Sean, when the ball moves, the scoreboard moves. When the ball sticks, the scoreboard sticks. It sounds so simple, elementary, but does it get cloudy during a game? And that's why it's so important to play as a unit. Now, management often has amnesia, where they don't think like that. And so they want to only have the best talent on the court. And so a lot of times, you've been in situations, Sean, where a team is ultra talented, but they underperform. Usually speaking, that's when it's a court tilt, and that the star players are one-dimensional, and they don't share the ball with their teammates. And that's why they aren't as successful based on their talent.
I mean, we've seen this at every level of sport. We've seen this as we get ready for college football season, where teams will they'll just accumulate an insane amount of talent, and now you have to pay for it. So they'll throw a bunch of money at that, but for whatever reason, it doesn't translate into wins, and then coaches get blamed for it. And a lot of it, I mean, I guess it is on the coaches to make sure team chemistry ends up working out, but gosh, easier said than done.
Very much. So generally speaking, every sport is that the attention to detail. So, Sean, in football, the better teams that go to deep in the playoffs, they have very few pre-snap penalties.
Sure.
That's why they win. They're able to execute under pressure. I'm simplifying it. In basketball, oh, by the way, that's a foul. So to put a team into the penalty left in the quarter at the 9-minute and 5-second mark of a quarter, a team shooting a penalty because we had 5 bizarre fouls, that happened in practice probably 1,000 times. And that's when you have to correct it either very, very quickly, either very softly, or unfortunately sometimes loudly, because the players, they're not listening. I call that invisible earmuffs, that they're yesing you to death, but they're not listening. And that's when you have to, and that's why, again, the better teams, they win because they don't beat themselves.
All right, I got to ask you this before we get to your list. Crazy story that is going to end up going to trial, I guess. But a Miami Heat security guard stole like 400 game-worn jerseys out of the locker room. Sold them to online brokers for a total of $2 million over a 3-year period. And he got caught. He got busted. By the way, he's a retired police officer, which is just – he was a 25-year retired veteran of the Miami Police Department who ended up working for Miami Heat security and actually NBA security for a short time. He sold 100 of the things that he stole. They think that he could have stolen up to about 400 different things. Oh yeah, he sold 100 items. He had already they seized another 300 stolen game-worn jerseys and other valuable memorabilia from his residence back in April. Did you ever encounter this in your years in the NBA where somebody, stuff started disappearing from the locker room?
Yes, I have. Yes, I've seen it. Yes, I've seen it. Yes. And the reason why is that usually at the equipment manager, there's only like 3 or 4 people have that magical key, I call it, to the equipment room. And unfortunately, that this person, Miami Heat, had security, had that key. And it's not one thing; it's a lot of things. Remember, Sean, the players sometimes get like 50 pairs of sneakers delivered by Adidas or by Nike or New Balance.
Sure.
Times, all these players, and it goes into a secure room that only people have. We'll say again, 3 or 4 people have access to that room. But who's to say that those people? Hopefully, they're ethical. You hope they are, but this person was not. So it does happen, unfortunately, and then it's so suddenly online or in some auction house. And that's when it gets crazy.
Yeah, this guy, by the way, not a great businessman, all right? Because while unethical, to say the least, he also, the best example in the article here, he sold a game-worn LeBron jersey, NBA Finals jersey. He sold it for about $100,000, and that thing ended up selling for $3.7 million. So he's... Not only is he a thief, he's kind of a bad businessman. He's not even getting near the value of these things. At least if you're gonna steal from LeBron a NBA Finals game-worn jersey, don't unload it at a discount. Don't be fencing that thing to some rando for a fraction of what it's worth.
I'm saddened by it because again, in the NBA, there's so few people in the locker room. There's only 15 players, and the coaches and the trainers, meaning athletic trainers, and some of the other personnel. So it's really a small group, and that's why it's so disturbing that this person able to do that. But speaking of disturbing, Sean, this is our last list of this NBA season, and it has a Utah Jazz flavor and has a flavor also, Sean, leaning towards you. Yes.
Gordy,
Sean O'Connell.
Gordy knows what kind of what kind of basketball player I was in my very undecorated basketball career.
Well, you told me this over the last year or so. This list today is the top 10 NBA leaders in most technical fouls accumulated. Most technical fouls accumulated. The common traits are being physical, emotional, you're skilled, you're competitive,
all right,
and you have longevity because it's based on a career. Here we go. Number 10, most technical fouls. Kevin Garnett played 21 years in the NBA, hit 172 technical fouls.
Passionate guy.
And he's in Hall of Fame. Number 9, Dwight Howard played in the NBA for 18 years, Hall of Famer, 178 technical fouls. Anthony Mason played in the NBA for 13 years, 192 technical fouls.
That's a lot in 13 years.
Number 7, he's playing right now. He's a free agent. You either love him or dislike him. Russell Westbrook has played in the NBA for 17 years. Future Hall of Famer, has 198 technical fouls. Number 6, he was born and raised in Germany. He played for 21 years for the Dallas Mavericks. He's in the Hall of Fame. Dirk Nowitzki accumulated 199 technical fouls. Number 5, nickname was the Worm. Played in the NBA for 14 seasons in the Hall of Fame. Dennis Rodman accumulated 212 technical fouls. Number 4, nickname was the Glove. Played in the NBA for 17 seasons, Hall of Famer. Technical fouls amassed 250. Number 3, this person is even interesting, even more so than a lot of people. Rasheed Wallace played in the NBA for 16 years, including an NBA record of the most technical fouls ever in a single season in the 2001 NBA season with Portland, where he committed 41 technical fouls. It's the most ever in the NBA. With the 41 added to it, he accumulated 317 technical fouls, third all time.
Is he the reason why they started to institute suspensions and fines for an accumulation of technical fouls?
That is correct. The answer is yes. Number
you, you changed the rules of your league by too many technical fouls. I love that.
Number 2 all time, Charles Barkley, played in the NBA for 16 seasons, Hall of Famer, had 329 technical fouls. And number 1, I coached this guy for 16 years. I saw most of these technical fouls. Remember the criteria: physical, emotional, skilled, competitive, longevity. Karl Malone played in the NBA for 19 years, Hall of Famer. Karl accumulated 332 technical fouls. After this, Jerry Sloan, the Jazz trusted leader, my colleague, has the NBA record for most ever also technical fouls as a head coach. So I've been involved with both people as a player and head coach, technical fouls. Lastly, the last point about this, let's go the other side, Sean, the flip side of it, the other extreme. Mike Conley has never been assessed a game technical foul in his 18-year-old career through to the 24-25 season.
Zero?
That's 1,172 games, total minutes played, 36,597. Michael Conley has never had a technical foul. That's the opposite of the spectrum.
Okay. What we need, James, all right, you're the boss around here, not during the show, but as soon as the show's over, when you put your boss hat back on, we need to get Karl Malone and Mike Conley doing some kind of podcast, like a good guy, bad guy kind of thing, good cop, bad cop. You're talking about a guy with none and the all-time leader. Both of them who have played in a Jazz uniform. That's unbelievable. That's playing that long without getting a single one is far more rare and impressive than being the guy who obviously had the most. That's crazy.
And Mike Conley he's a good player.
Yeah.
He's a good player.
It's not like you're some dude who's been on the bench and you haven't been on the floor and you haven't been elbowed and you haven't been, like, the fact that he has never been reactive in his NBA career to the point of being assessed a technical foul, he must meditate a lot or something. That is bananas to me. Because I'm sure we could find situations where Mike Conley got fouled hard or guys were talking trash. Man, that is insane. Mike Conley, the next time we talk to him, the discussion's going to be all about that. Thank you for that factoid, Gordy.
So, Sean, this list was a flavor of Utah Jazz, but it was geared all towards someone like yourself, of your physicality, emotionalism, skill, competitiveness, and longevity.
Three of those things I don't have. Two of them I do. No longevity in the basketball world for sure. Gordy, you're the man.
Thanks, Sean. Peace out.
Appreciate it. Gordy will be back with us as we approach basketball season. We've leaned so heavily on him for the last 9 months, and we'll give him a little respite. Hopefully he's off to Tahiti or something. You got any plans, Gordy, by the way? You gonna take any real vacation?
Yes, I'm going back to NYC, New York City.
All right.
On Tuesday.
Nice.
Where I visit my crazy relatives. I need a vacation from my vacation, if you get my drift.
Yes. The nice thing is, if you're in New York, those airports, you can fly to anywhere in the world from there. So if you really have to hop on something and escape, you can. That's Gordy Chiesa, our resident NBA guru. Love Gordy Chiesa. Thank you, sir. And the Detroit Lions have announced a new rule. It's only them that are going to be playing by this rule, and it's called the Hutch Rule. I'll explain what it is for you next on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700. The noon hour. Our Big 12 coverage is brought to you by Mountain Land Supply. Visit mountainlandsupply.com. We got some Kyle Whittingham, Camp Kyle sound I want to play for you. But I want to tell you first, maybe we'll do that in the next segment, because I want to tell you about this Hutch rule that I just read about. I remember mostly in high school, I would be very enamored with these stories. And I don't know if you've read them, heard them, but it feels like every team, every program has some kind of story about a guy who's just he's so much different than his peers that you have to adjust things, right? We just talked about with Gordy Chiesa how the NBA had to institute like some special rules because of Rasheed Wallace getting so many dang technicals in a single season. Well, the Detroit Lions are apparently growing the already Paul Bunyan reputation of Aiden Hutchinson by instituting something they call the Hutch rule at their practice. Now, this is an NFL practice. These are the best players in the world, and this is a team now that has excellent play on their offensive line. I mean, one of the top 5 offensive lines in professional football. Aiden Hutchinson apparently is still so disruptive now that he's back off his surgery, back off his injury, that they've instituted the Hutch rule, meaning that if he is the guy who makes the play on a drop back, they do not blow the whistle. That's how often, allegedly, Aiden Hutchinson is making plays at practice. That if he's the guy who tags off on the quarterback, which would institute a whistle blow, they just let the play keep running. Otherwise, it would be too disruptive in practice. I remember hearing songs about I remember hearing stories about how Ndamukong Suh at Nebraska just wasn't allowed to practice against his team, basically, because he would dominate everyone so bad that the offense couldn't get any reps in. Haloti Ngata, there were stories about Haloti in high school and in college. They had a guy named Igor Olshansky at the time. They were like the 2 strongest players in college football. And so during team periods, they would just have to like jog around. I can not corroborate all these stories, but these are just like the legends that come out of programs about certain players. And to have this happening for a young player in the NFL where his own team is admitting like, yeah, if he's the guy that disrupts practice, we just let it keep going because he does it so often. When he broke his leg last year and ended his season, he had 7.5 more quarterback hurries than anyone else in the NFL. It was still early in the year. They were 5 games in? And he was on this pace to be freakishly productive. And now apparently he's back and better than ever. So much so that they've changed the practice rules in Detroit, and they won't blow the whistle if Aiden Hutchinson is the guy making the play.
That's incredible. And so legendary, by the way, those other stories you brought up, that they made songs of them.
Yes.
they wrote songs.
They will sing the songs of your dominance.
That's very Game of Thrones of them to be.
For centuries.
I've heard songs of the dominance of
yes.
Haloti Ngata.
Honestly?
Haloti Ngata.
There probably are some out there. There's probably someone who wrote a song about it. But, man, here's the thing. Aiden Hutchinson must be such a nice human being, because if this is what was going on around me I'm already pretty insufferable ego-wise. Can you imagine?
You don't have to tell me, Yossi.
If your NFL team is out there publicly admitting to people that you're so much better than everyone on the NFL team that, like, yeah, man, we just have to like make new rules for this guy. You know how insufferable I would be?
He's like, that's right, you do.
Yeah, that's insane.
I'm that guy.
Anyway, excited to see what he can do. I'm not a Detroit Lions fan. I'm not a Michigan Wolverines fan.
Thank goodness.
He's an interesting test case.
Yeah.
In the world of college football and to the NFL. This is like, he's the hometown dude. This is where he wanted to play. This is close to where he attended college. This is close to where he grew up. It's like he's a Michigan dude, and he's playing for the Detroit Lions. And apparently he's playing so well in camp for the Detroit Lions that they're just like, all right, dude, stop messing up practice. Stop. We're trying to get reps in. This is kind of how it was when I was on the Utah football team. When I was playing scout team, I was so dominant on scout team.
Yeah, I was gonna say
that they were just like, hey, dude, stop making so many plays.
You weren't the one.
Urban was like,
you
hey,
weren't the one getting destroyed. You were the one destroying people on scout team. Of course.
Urban was like, hey, dude, we get it, okay? You're the best player on the team. Just stop. And it might have been a slightly different tone than what they have with Hutch. It's like,
hey, walk on. Stop hitting the good players.
I dumbed it down so much that I never played. Like I went too far. Aiden Hutchinson, that you run the risk, okay? If you cool it off too much, then you're going to get benched to the point where you never see the field, Aiden. I'm just warning you.
Exactly.
Okay, because that's what happened to me.
Seen it happen. Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see, pointing this to the Lions side of things as a team. Very interesting to see if they have a healthy Aiden Hutchinson all year long and the team plays as well as they did the last couple of years, certainly last year without him. Just how far they can go, because they were looked at as a Super Bowl team going into the playoffs last year, even though they didn't have a healthy Aiden Hutchinson, and they end up getting destroyed by Washington in the divisional round. You would think that having Aiden Hutchinson there makes that game much different. So it'll be interesting to see if they really can live up to the Super Bowl potential with arguably their best player on the field, hopefully for the whole season. I love watching the Lions. I'm with you. I'm not a Lions fan, but they're really fun to watch. And their story, because they've just really never been good, consistently until now. It's hard to ignore. It's hard to root against a franchise like that who finally has some sustained excellence to root. It's hard to root for them not to break through and fulfill some potential Super Bowl potential. We'll see.
All right, we got Ari Temkin coming on in about 15 minutes. We're going to take a quick one here. We've got sound from yesterday's Utah media availability that we want to play for you. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. All right, I lied to you, and I am very sorry about that. We're gonna save the Camp Kyle sound until about 1:30 on the show today, after our conversation with Big 12 insider Ari Temkin. Right now, it's time for a PGA Tour leaderboard update from the FedEx St. Jude Championship, first leg of the FedEx Cup playoffs. This update is brought to you by Uinta Golf. Unleash your swing with Ping's G440 woods and irons, crafted for precision and power. G440 driver and irons deliver faster ball speeds, incredible control, and enhanced forgiveness. Available at Uinta Golf. All right, James Peterson, what's going on at the FedEx St. Jude Championship?
Akshay Bhatia is your leader at 8 under right now, and most of the guys have finished their opening round. By the way, most of the guys at the top of the leaderboard anyway. Harry Hall tied for second along with Justin Rose at 6 under. Let's see some of the other names we got here in the top 10. Maverick McNeely tied for fourth at 4 under. Wyndham Clark among a bunch of guys tied for sixth at 3 under. That rounds out your top 10. Gonna see our guy Tony Finau, how well he's doing. He's near the beginning of his opening round. He's through 2 holes at even par. So long ways to go for him the rest of this opening round there. 8 shots off the lead, but still plenty of time to make up for it. That's your PGA Tour leaderboard update from the St. Jude Championship, first leg of the FedEx Cup playoffs, brought to you by Uinta Golf.
Make sure you go and unleash your swing with the Ping G440 woods and irons. Crafted with precision and power. That's all I need. That's what's been holding me back. I need to unleash my swing.
You know firsthand just how much your swing can be unleashed with this, right?
Well, I don't. That's the problem.
I don't. My bad.
I haven't unleashed my swing. Foolishly, I have failed to
still
unleash
leashed.
the swing.
The swing is still leashed.
Yeah. What am I doing, man?
This is kind of a fun time of year for golf fans. It's not obviously as big a deal as the majors, but it's almost like the 5th major for PGA Tour players, because this is the Tour Championship. This is their version of the playoffs. I think it's the top 50 that move on from this. So if you finish in the top 50, you move on to the next round. It gets whittled down from there. It maybe I got the numbers a little bit wrong there, but they whittle it down with each tournament and decide a lone champion.
All right, ESPN put out an interesting list, putting the 136. There are now 136 FBS college football teams into power tiers. Okay. How many tiers are there? Let me make sure I have the correct number of tiers before I put James on the spot.
I mean,
which is one of my favorite. Okay, there's 20.
I mean, that depends on how good the team is, how many tiers there'll be, right?
There's no, James, not that.
Wrong tiers. My bad.
TIERS.
I thought you were.
There's
bunch
20
of people crying.
There's
My bad.
20 total. All right.
Okay, 20.
There's
tiers.
20 total tiers. 20 levels. I don't like using tier because verbally it sounds like crying. 20 different levels that ESPN has sorted these.
You don't like setting me up for bad puns.
Correct.
Too. I know that.
That's also the problem. If tier 1A is Ohio State and Texas alone, as national championship favorite type teams,
should really just be Ohio State alone, but move on.
And if Georgia, Oregon, and Penn State are on tier 1B, and then you go all the way down to tier 20, and it's the teams that all of us like to use as punchlines, which unfortunately is going to be the perpetual reality for UMass, for New Mexico State, Akron, Ball State, etc.
The Citadel probably, or they not even FCS.
They're not FBS.
These are FBS, of course.
Yes. So if that's tier 20, where do you think the Utes are? Which tier do you think ESPN has put the Utes on?
Let's see. So just thinking out loud here. What was that athletic article? Was that about the valuations of programs? Utah was 30th in there, which is not a power ranking. They're 30th, around 30th in the coaches poll. I'm gonna say that'd put them. Would that be a top 10 tier in
It
this
is-
list? If
they're
they're
on a top
30,
10, yeah,
okay.
they're on
I'm
a
gonna
top 10
say
tier.
I'm
In
gonna
fact,
say 9.
I'm going to help you by I'm going to give you the subheadings. I'm going to give you the names of the tiers.
Okay.
Okay. 1A and 1B are the championship expectations. Tier 2, playoff expectations. Okay.
So 2. Utah's in 2.
Tier 3, someone in the SEC has to lose games too. Tier 4, last year's playoff surprises. Tier 5, so hot right now. Tier 6,
The Hansel tier.
Tier 6, the Big 12 is the new ACC Coastal. Tier 7, flying beneath the radar like Tom Cruise in Maverick. All right, well done. Little movie reference.
Was he under the radar? All right.
Tier 8, regression to the mean. Yeah, that whole thing in Top Gun Maverick.
Oh, yeah, that's
underneath.
right. That's right. My bad.
Come on.
I was thinking what under the radar means, not literally.
Literally
he was
under the radar.
That's right. He was, yeah.
Tier 9, regression to the mean, the good kind of regression to the mean. Tier 10, the Big Ten's ticking clocks. Tier 10B, the group of 6's other playoff contenders.
So not 10B.
So
you helped me out there. There's a few that are named for conferences.
yeah.
What was 9 again?
9 was regression to the mean, the good kind.
Yeah, I think that's what I said before you started naming them. I think I'm going to stick with that.
All right. Well, you're dead wrong, James, and you should be embarrassed about that.
Oh, no.
They're in Tier 5, so hot right now.
Oh, so hot right now.
It's Illinois.
The Hansel tier.
Yeah.
The Mugatu Hansel tier.
And actually, that is when it comes to predicting which teams that might be, the schools in Tier 5 are the hottest thing since Hansel and the hit runway.
He's so hot right now, OC. That Hansel's so hot right now.
The so hot right now teams are Illinois, Louisville, Texas Tech, and Utah.
Oh, okay.
There's plenty of buzz that this year's Indiana could be Illinois. Jeff Schwartz talked about how they've got one of the best offensive lines in college football when he joined us this week.
Does Illinois have a really bad schedule they can really take advantage of too?
Yes.
Like Indiana did?
Yes, they do actually.
Oh, great.
Utah enters this season as a trendy pick of the Big 12 thanks to some returning stars, an expectation that last year's bad luck has to turn, and finally opening a season with someone other than, and this is actually messed up and might make an appearance on the grievances tomorrow. And finally opening a season with someone other than the hollowed-out shell of Cam Rising at QB.
Gosh.
Cam Rising catching strays.
Oh, my gosh.
I do not endorse that on this show. I was hesitant to even read it. How dare you, ESPN?
Cam, if he heard that all the way back in Newbury Park, we apologize, Cam. Maybe he's actually still no. He's got to be back there because the high school football season's about to start.
They got a game next week.
He's on the staff, so he's back home. I was gonna say maybe he's even hearing it because he's still in Utah.
No, he's got a game next week.
Yeah, that is quite the unnecessary stray. I mean, to say it would have been fine if they said, and they don't have the uncertainty of whether or not their quarterback is going to be healthy like they had with Cam Rising, but that is not what they said.
No. I don't like the reference, and I don't support it, but I do support the idea that they are a trendy pick to win the Big 12.
So hot right now.
This one also an interesting point about Louisville. If luck kept Utah from the Big 12 race last season, it might have kept Louisville from the playoffs. The Cardinals lost 4 games, 3 to top 15 teams, all by a touchdown or less, which is a point you could make about Utah football, not top 15 teams, of course.
But losing a lot of close games,
along with a defeat at the hands of Stanford that will go down as possibly the single dumbest way to lose a football game that didn't involve throwing a shoe. And that I love the point they made. This is good writing. That thing about Cam Rising, bad writing, this is good writing.
I mean,
if you're not
very
psyched,
creative way of talking about Cam Rising.
If you're not psyched for Texas Tech this year, how much cash would it take to change your mind? That's good writing.
Yeah.
It's a masterful sentence.
Yeah. Louisville was really good last season. But they did have a lot of bad luck as far as in close games. I'm not sure they had as much bad injury luck that Utah had. I'm not sure many teams in the country did. Curious where BYU lands.
BYU is in the regression to the mean, the bad kind.
Yeah.
They're tier number 8. BYU, Duke, Mizzou, Syracuse, and Vanderbilt.
I can understand why they'd be put in that category. I thought well before the Retzlaff stuff, well before that made news about why he eventually had to transfer, I was thinking they were going to regress to the mean. They're not going to get as many turnovers, and if they get a similar amount of turnovers, they're not going to go for as many touchdowns as they did this last season. Probably not going to get as many special team touchdowns because that stuff tends to be, you're really good at that this year. The ball bounces your way in that regard. That one season and then the next season, you're looking up at the sky with your hands up like, what happened? We were so good at this last year. It's like, well, because the ball literally had to bounce in your direction for you to have that kind of insane production, special teams and defensive touchdowns and turnovers. It doesn't really happen like that 2 years in a row, typically. So I was thinking for those reasons, that might be a regression to the mean. But you seem to think, maybe not for that same reasons, but you seem to think that they're poised to still have a really good year.
I think they could have a really good year. I just think that, people hate hearing it on the home of the Utes, but BYU football has become Utah football. A defense you can rely on. I think they're going to have a good running game. There's questions in the passing game this year because there's questions about the quarterback. There's actually not questions about their wide receiver room. So I just think that they're going to have a really solid year. I don't know that they'll be an 11-win team again. I think that they are going to be a factor in the conference championship race, but that is true of probably 6 different teams in the Big 12.
Yeah,
and there was an interesting.
We've been talking about that.
Interesting
crazy
factoid
amount
here
of teams
that I have to mention. BYU and Syracuse are both in the same tier, regression to the mean, the bad kind. They were tied or trailing 7 times going into the fourth quarter last year, and each of those teams, BYU and Syracuse, in those scenarios, tied or trailing going into the fourth quarter, 6-1.
Yeah. See, that's another thing. Like I talked about the not getting as many turnovers, not getting as many defensive and special teams touchdowns than multiple years in a row. But that's a big reason why they were so good in close games, OC. And close games you don't necessarily get on the right side of close games a couple years in a row like that. You got to be able to you got to be able to dominate teams, and that's the kind of thing that carries over year to year. BYU didn't necessarily do that last season, although they had a dominant record.
Look, Washington made it all the way to a national championship game without dominating anybody. So
it can happen for 1 year, I think.
Winning is what matters. You got to win. And look, I think that BYU lost important talent? Sure. On the offensive line especially, and anytime you lose a returning starter quarterback, that's losing important talent. I just think that you're going to be able to replace that production at quarterback. Whether you can replace the intangibles, we'll see. You're going to be able to replace that production, and then the offensive line question is kind of a wait-and-see sort of prospect.
And you know what? I'm with you with I can believe that because of how good the coaching staff is, because of how good the other returning talent is, especially on the defensive side and the wide receiver core running backs for BYU, I can believe that they will be able to find other ways to win games than what they did last season if that proves to not be as sustainable as I believe it will be. So.
All right, got to take a break. We'll start hour number 3 with Ari Temkin, Big 12 Insider. Excuse me. On ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show, hour number 3 on a Thursday, and we welcome Ari Temkin, Big 12 insider. Ari, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
I'm great, OC. How are you, buddy?
Doing all right, man. We're, 23 days away from Utah kicking off its college football season. Exciting times here in Salt Lake City. You know how it is. When it's just practice time, there's optimism. Everyone's brimming with it, and a lot of Ute fans are feeling extra optimism because depending on what sports book you look at, but Vegas is starting to show a little bit of confidence that the Utes are going to have a bounce-back year. We've seen multiple publications. Folks listen to my show. They listen to other shows. They listen to your show. And, we try to shape thoughts in a realistic way. When you're prognosticating at this point in the cycle, how much do you pay attention to Vegas and how much do you pay attention to the rest of the publications out there and helping frame your own opinions?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, with Vegas, it's really interesting to see where the lines move. So obviously bettors to a degree are going to shift the line. So that can obviously skew perception. So, I always start with okay, who did they initially prognosticate or who did they initially put as the favorite, to win the conference or, to their over under, where's the juice set at? Is it, are they influenced one way or the other? That's, I think, where I like to start. And then, once you get a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks down the line, you start to see, where bettors influence this. Actually, it's funny. We're doing 16 team previews over 16 days. We did BYU yesterday and Utah today. And speaking of that, the line for the opening game at UCLA started at 4.5. Utah was favored 4.5. That line has now moved to 6.5. And I'm thinking, man, I wish I could have gotten that at 4.5.
Yeah, that's snooze you lose apparently in that line movement at least. So yeah,
for a UCLA team that circles to tackle, for a UCLA team that circles to tackle, Devin Dampier and Wayshawn Parker are going to be a huge problem for them. I see week 1.
That's I tend to be overly cautious when we're talking about this time of year, and I tell people, hey man, Utah should win that game, but Utah is they're figuring some things out, adding a new offense, and UCLA, even when they're not good, they do have good athletes. That's one thing that the Bruins always can field is just freaks on defense and freaks on their offense as well. So even as that line moves, what do you think is the biggest obstacle in week 1 for Utah? Because we're, a week away from them starting the focus on UCLA and the install and things like that.
Yeah, and look, all of these non-conference games for the Big 12 against Big 10 and SEC opponents are huge, because it perception is reality in college football, and there's a lot of them. Baylor opens up Friday, August 29th at home against Auburn. Utah playing at the Rose Bowl against UCLA, there's just a bunch of them in the first couple of weeks of the season that are huge for this conference. But, don't forget UCLA was able to spend some money this offseason and coax Nico Iamaleava to leave Tennessee and come back home to UCLA. And for me, what a interesting opening matchup for him, considering, the strength of Utah, is pretty consistently on defense. So really tough way for them to start, and for him to start. And I never wish ill on any of these kids or any of these guys, but man, it won't take him long for him to realize he ain't Knoxville anymore. And you're right. UCLA is always going to have athletes. They're always going to have talent. There's an allure of that program. And so there's no doubt about it. They're going to have ballers. They've got NFL players. But yeah, I feel like the matchup, UCLA was one of the worst teams in college football last year at tackling. So number one, that stands out to me in a big way against a team like Utah who's going to force you to tackle. I'm not trying to say it doesn't have flaws. Everybody does. But one of the things they're really going to take advantage of opposition is teams that can't tackle, because the more I watch what New Mexico did last year, the more I see similarities to when my alma mater, Kansas, had Andy Kotelnicki as their offensive coordinator. I wouldn't have called Andy Kotelnicki's offense an option offense because it's not a traditional option, but it's an option offense. And I think we're going to see a lot of that, which is just a lot of window dressing, a lot of misdirection, a lot of pre-snap movement. And so, when you, again, have a team that struggles to tackle, that is going to be very problematic. They don't know where the ball is going to go. Obviously, I think we're going to see situations where, Rodgers and Parker are going to be on the field at the same time with some of that misdirection. So I think Utah, when it gets down to it, could struggle against teams defensively that force them to have to pass at times. But I don't think UCLA is going to be that type of team.
I've been setting some over-under numbers for the University of Utah, and we've been focusing on offense this week, and I'll throw some over-unders for for defensive stats next week. And today we got to one that was, it kind of haunts the conversation around Devin Dampier because he had the 12 touchdown passes, 12 interceptions at New Mexico last year. It's a little bit of an apples and oranges comparison because you're playing in the Mountain West Conference. We think that the roster at New Mexico was a lot more limited than the roster at the University of Utah is. But if I give you an over or under for 23.5 passing touchdowns for this Utah offense, with the assumption that Devin Dampier, knock on wood, stays healthy and is quarterbacking every one of these games, and then an over-under number of 11.5 interceptions, which is right where he was at last year, 12. What do you take on the overs and unders?
Wow. So 12 touchdowns and 12 picks last year. That seems like a ton of touchdowns when, traditionally, and especially within recent history, passing the football has not been a major strength of Utah, especially at the wide receiver position. So, not only is it, all right, you're concerned about his ability to pass, but also does Utah have the wideouts to win on the outside, especially after losing Branch, following the spring? I like Tobias Merriweather a lot, so I think there's some options there, but I think if we looked at the weaknesses of this team, positionally, I'd say the wide receiver is certainly one of those. So, to me, and I'm not exactly answering your question. I guess I would take the under on him throwing twice as many touchdown passes. And I would probably take the under on him throwing as many interceptions as he did last year, because I don't foresee a situation in which Kyle Whittingham allows him to throw 12 interceptions again this year, because that can completely derail the plan for this Utah team. Even in speaking with Kyle Whittingham at Big 12 Media Days, he mentioned to us he wants to see a 5% bump in his completion percentage, so somewhere in the low to mid 60s, which is completely reasonable. And then obviously they're trying to get it in the back of Dampier's mind in certain situations, we don't need interceptions on first down. It was something Dampier said to us, just like in watching film back last year, that there's certain situations last year that, first year for him in this New Mexico offense as he was with Jason Beck, he took probably a little bit too many chances. So I guess I take the under in both of those. I'm not confident in his ability to double up his touchdown passes from last year. I'm also not confident that he's going to throw 12 interceptions. And I think that's the bigger number, honestly. I have my thing on Utah, and I've said this before, is they're going to win a lot of games because teams will not be able to stop their rushing attack. But for them to win a Big 12 championship, I think they're going to have to pass the football. And if I look at, again, going back to my Jayhawks with Andy Kotelnicki, when they won 9 games and won a bowl game with Jason Bean at quarterback, who was their backup that year, but he was spectacular. He had track speed and he was phenomenal, but when they needed to, they could complete the ball down the field. And I just think there's teams that if you're not able to with that motion, you need to get the linebackers in position to where they're in conflict. That's the biggest part to that window dressing, is creating conflict with linebackers. And Cincinnati's one of the teams I've used it as an example. Not like Cincinnati's a world beater, but late in the season, Utah gets Cincinnati. Well, if they haven't proven that they can consistently win down the field, and Cincinnati has a really good front seven, their defensive line's really good with Dante Corleone, and I think they've got one of the best linebacking cores in the Big 12. That's one of those games where it's they're not going to believe that you can throw the football if you can't prove over the course of the season that you can. And so that, I think that motion and that misdirection doesn't matter as much, because you're not going to suck the linebackers in that way.
Yeah, I have the same thought process when I'm talking about how you balance out an offense that is certainly, with the personnel they have, including the offensive line, I think it is going to be very run heavy, and the concepts that will be integrated and added to what we saw from New Mexico are more likely to be run concepts than anything creative in the passing game because this is still a Kyle Whittingham head coach team, right? And I was looking for context at all these numbers I'm sitting. I look back at Utah football history. I look at some of what New Mexico did, and I'm looking like where are the realistic numbers to set? And you say, all right, well, if you throw, 24 touchdown passes, that's still not a crazy number. But is it enough to win a conference championship? And for Utah, in 2021 in the Pac-12, it was. They threw 31 touchdown passes in 2022 in a Pac-12 championship year. And then in the years that they were runners-up in the conference, they threw 20 or fewer, which is nuts because you look at all the other conference championship contending teams in the country, in the Power 4 or Power 5 at least, and these are teams who are far more prolific through the air. So even as I'm asking these questions, every one of these numbers I set in the passing game is only if you hit the over just barely, it puts you right in the middle of the Big 12 conference from, last year, the year before, et cetera, which is, I keep asking myself, do I believe that Utah's ever going to be a freakishly good passing offense? Well, not in the near future, but is middle of the pack good enough based on your defense and based on your run game to get you at least to that championship game? And I keep coming to, yes, probably.
Yeah. Well, and not only that, but so a couple of things. I remember looking at this at one point, but in the Pac-12 championship seasons, Rising had 5 picks, 4 picks. I mean, it was 31-3, 31-4, right? Something ridiculous.
It was 31-10 the second year, and it was 24-8 the first.
Okay, so more than I was, anticipating, but still a pretty good number, especially the 31-10. That's a good ratio. That's what you're looking for. So, for me, I zero in on I'm more concerned about the 12 than I would be about the 12 touchdowns with Dampier. I'm so much more concerned about the interceptions. And to your point, maybe I shouldn't be. Maybe if he's at 2-1, obviously that's considerably better than 1-1, which is what he was last year. But would 2-1 be good enough? The other part, and this is the part that keeps coming back to me. So just stylistically, this conference is a pass-heavy conference. But that's a huge departure from what it was last year and really last couple of years. I mean, 2 years ago, this conference had the Doak Walker Award winner and Ollie Gordon, who rushed for nearly 2,000 yards. And even last year, though Gordon had a really bad year, I mean, you look across the league, and there were a bunch of guys that got drafted, R.J. Harvey, Devin Neal, that were Big 12 backs last year, and they're all gone now. And, overwhelmingly, the strength of the conference, the quarterback position. And then you look across, and you're like, there's a lot of good receivers. So it almost feels like Utah is zigging a little bit here, even though it's pretty traditional for the way the Utes have been stylistically last decade plus. It's a total zig to the rest of the conference, and I can't decide if that's a good thing or a bad thing because one of the things we talked about was is this in basketball trading threes for twos here, where all these teams are going to be passing to you twice as many times as you're running the football in a game. And I mean, I don't know that it's a complete comparison from a threes to twos thing, but it is they're a total stylistically outlier this year in the Big 12, where most teams are going to be very pass savvy and most teams are kind of built with passing offenses. There's not going to be a lot of quality rushing offenses this year, which again I can't decide if that's a good thing or a bad thing for Utah.
Yeah, that's a tough one because, like you said, I mean, there's a reason why football over the years has moved toward the passing game. It's just a more efficient and more rapid way to put points on the board. And Utah's really good when they play the game at their own pace and they can slow everybody else down. And obviously a ball control offense is something that has really helped Kyle Whittingham. But his best years, his championship level years in the Mountain West Conference before and in the Pac-12 before have been years of more significant balance where your offense is prolific and you're putting up touchdowns. You're not doing the Colorado thing or you're not doing the, Joe Burrow LSU thing where you got 60 touchdown passes, but the better years for Kyle Whittingham, 2008 and 2021, 2022, you balance it out. You don't do things the way that people think of Kyle Whittingham offenses doing things. So I'm curious to see how it nets this year, like it sounds you are. And, that brings me to the question of with the parity in the conference and with some of these stylistic differences and battles coming, how much are schedules going to matter, you think, when we get down to this, the last 3-4 weeks of the season? The tougher schedules obviously presenting greater challenges along the way, but also the tiebreakers that we're going to get to with the team with the conference that's got 16 teams now and no chance for everyone to play everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just hit the nail on the head there in terms of the significance of the scheduling. And one of the things, like, for me, BYU and Utah in particular, and so the way we did our 16 team previews in 16 days is the three of us put together our poll, me and my co-host James and our producer Brian. We basically put together our teams where we ranked them 1 through 16, and then the aggregate score of the three of us is where we finished out. So we had BYU at 10 and Utah at 9, or it's BYU at 9 and Utah at 8, one or the other. Can't remember exactly. But like, this speaks to, like, this conference needs to be more predictable. And I think part of the reason we're like having such a difficult time in prognosticating for these teams is because, well, obviously what happened last year, but like what's happened within this conference in terms of parity really, in recent history. But obviously that's new to Utah. But even Utah wasn't immune to the parity last year, given, how poorly the season went. And so, like, it's in other conferences, it's like, it feels like 1 + 1 = 2. Like, okay, they're really talented here, and like this should work out, and like they're going to be good because of this. And like, it's just, I feel like I don't know if you are, constantly second-guessing myself on things because this has just been a league of parity. And like, what you expect doesn't always come to fruition like in other leagues. So it would be nice for this league to be a little bit more what we expect so that it's easier to predict. And then you can look at your schedule and be like, hey, this is going to be a really tough schedule based on the opponents that this team has down the stretch of the season. But yeah, I mean, so this all goes back to your question, which is, yeah, I mean, I think this is significant. Like, TCU, for me, is a team that is going to be a victim to its schedule. I mean, Utah has a really tough schedule in the Big 12. I think when I looked at it, they play the top 5 teams that I projected in the Big 12 this year. Maybe the exception was Iowa State, but even Kansas down the stretch of the year at Kansas, opening up a new stadium could be a tough one. I projected Iowa State ahead of Kansas, but still, like 5, 6, 7, wherever it is. So I mean, when you think about Texas Tech and Arizona State and Kansas State, and then those games are at home, but you get West Virginia on the road, which is a tough road game because of the distance. And so, yeah, I mean, it's Cincinnati late in the season. I think Cincinnati could be a surprise team. Now I think they need to take a step, kind of like we've talked about with Utah and their passing offense. They really had no receivers to speak of last year, and that was a big reason why Sorsby took a nosedive in the final 7 games of the season. But, Cincinnati is going to be good in their front seven, as we talked about. And I think that could play to one of the, a strength on strength, Utah's rush offense against Cincinnati's rush defense. We'll see when we get there. It's late in the season. But, yeah, I mean, I 100% schedule is something to pay attention to. Like, we can look and break down these teams and look at strengths, look at weaknesses. But if you're not getting the whole picture of who they play, when they play them, and, and where those games are, you're missing a huge part of it. I think TCU is one of those teams. Like, TCU has a really tough schedule. I might have picked TCU to be in the conference championship had they had an easier schedule. And I think, like, for Texas Tech or some of these other teams where it's like, oh, they have an easier road there because their schedule isn't tough. And again, that can change and has changed. Like, recent history suggests that, that what we think might be a tough schedule isn't actually going to be a tough schedule, and vice versa. So yeah, that's why I'd like this conference to be a little bit more predictable in the future.
Well, I know that this time last year, all of us here in Salt Lake City had that road trip to Oklahoma State scheduled. Like, that's where the conference is decided. Right. That's the game right there. And then when Isaac Wilson played well in that game, we're just like, hey, everything's going to be just fine. Well, you know how the season worked out after that. But it's predictability, while boring, it'd be nice to be a little bit more boring in the Big 12 right now.
It would be. Like, I mean, we could probably give a pretty good prediction of what the top 5 of the preseason AP poll will be in 2026. Okay, we haven't even had the AP preseason poll released for 2025, but you and I could probably put our heads together and predict what the top 5 is going to be for 2026 because it's going to look awfully similar to what it will here in 2025.
Yes.
It's going to have a lot of Georgias and Texas and Bama and Ohio State. And so, I mean, that's the predictability you're talking about. And yeah, I mean, I think that's where the league is, the league doesn't want us saying that it's parity. They want to use a different word for it because even that word is used as a descriptor for the conference does the conference, a disservice. It's viewed nationally, as a negative, and whether or not it should be is a discussion, is a different discussion altogether. But that's where this conference is right now. It's a fun conference. Anybody that covers this league knows that, but then anybody from the outside looking in that covers college football is like, oh, it's a fun league to watch. They have, they have really close games and, you don't know who's going to win. And like that, I think is where the conference hurts itself because, that's why BYU probably wasn't closer to discussion about getting to the college football playoff last year for that exact perception and bias and reason. So despite the fact that they beat SMU and had some quality wins against opponents that were obviously in the playoffs. So, yeah, I mean, it would be nice. And, I don't think Ohio State's going to end up as a top 5 team in the postseason because they've got brand new players everywhere. I think they're the most overrated team in the preseason. So we'll see.
When we look at the coaches poll, and the AP poll comes out on Monday, when you look at the coaches poll, not a lot of love for the conference. Arizona State, highest ranked at 11. Everybody else down in the 20 to 25 range. And then plenty of also rans. Utah, I think, came in, netted out at number 30 in the preseason coaches poll. Do you expect any difference in the upcoming AP poll?
Probably not much, which is, astonishing. So I didn't know this, but voters for the AP poll had to get their votes in by August 1st, which, I guess as foolish as it is to do a preseason poll, it's even more foolish to do it even before fall camp has started, but here we are. And yeah, it does seem like despite the fact that the coaches during fall camp will tell you that they're only focused on themselves, somehow, despite that, they're still filling out a ballot, even though they're not. We know they're not. It's usually like the PR director, the SID, that's filling that out for them. But like the coaches will say, I'm only focused on us. I'm only focused on us. We're only focused on us. We're only focused on us. And yet somehow they come up with a poll. I don't know how that's possible, but that's what they do every year. And so they shouldn't be a credible voice in this because they're only focused on themselves, and they probably should be as coaches of those programs. And yet despite that, the AP poll does seem to mirror that. I maintain maybe we should just take the recruiting rankings and rank teams in the preseason based on where they finished in the last few recruiting rankings, because that's what it seems like we do. How else would Ohio State be as high as they are? How else would Michigan be as high as they are? Miami's the one that kills me. Like, nobody does more with less. Maybe Texas and Texas A&M do more with less talent, do less with more talent. But like Miami, my God, they were 9-0 last year and then lost 3 of the last 4 games, including losing to Iowa State in their bowl game.
Look, losing the number 1 overall NFL draft pick is not going to hurt them. Okay, they're right where they belong.
They went 9-0, lost 3 of the last 4 games with the runner-up to the Heisman Trophy and the number 1 overall pick. My God, why do we keep overrating Miami every year? Like, this is 1999.
Well, tonight we're going to party like it is. Man.
Let's go.
Ari, very much looking forward to all of our conversations that'll happen between now and the end of the college football season. I appreciate your time today, and we'll chat again soon.
Appreciate you, OC. Be well, brother. Take care.
That's Ari Temkin, Big 12 Radio on TuneIn, Big 12 Insider, and you can hear he knows each of these teams. He knows the challenges, the schedules. He knows what's in front of each of these teams, and I think he is one that looks at Utah's schedule and weights it a little bit heavier than maybe I do. But there are no easy days in this Big 12 conference, if last year's a good indicator. We've got Camp Kyle sound for you next on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. You got preseason NFL games tonight. You're probably looking at a situation where if you try to turn that thing on at home, your spouse, significant other, roommate is going to be like, "What are you doing, you degenerate? Why are you watching preseason NFL football?" I have a solution for you. You know where you will not be judged that way? Big Willie's, 1717 South Main. You want a delicious meal? You want a big old plate of food? Maybe fried, maybe healthy. They've got options for both. You want an adult beverage or just a little sody pop? You could even have ice water. That's what I get when I'm there. And you want people that are also enamored with seeing whether or not last year's Heisman Trophy winner, Travis Hunter, can actually do it on both sides of the ball in the preseason. Big Willie's is the place. You want that supportive environment? Head down there tonight. Head down there tomorrow. Head down there Saturday. Head down there Sunday. Head down there anytime sports are on television, and you'll find a welcoming environment with people just like you who just want to sit, enjoy some food, enjoy a beverage, and watch some sports. 1717 South Main, it is Utah's sports bar. And if you want to shoot some pool, they just refelted the tables. They take pride in the pool hall down there at Big Willie's. Just don't try to hustle anybody, okay? That's the public service announcement from the Sean O'Connell Show. My friends down there at Big Willie's will take care of you if you mention our name. I can promise you that.
And it's also like if you are that kind of a degenerate that wants to watch every preseason football game, you can be around other people who want to agonize over player number 50 through 53 on your favorite team's active roster.
Why not?
Why
right?
not?
There's a
that's the
difference.
That is the difference between making the playoffs and winning the Super Bowl, of course.
By the way, Big Willie's is open right now. They're running lunch specials right now. So if you're looking to get out of work and you got 40 minutes or an hour to kill, go watch some Little League World Series, crack some jokes, have some of the delicious fries, or my personal favorite, the tater tots. Tell them OC sent you. All right. We have Camp Kyle Sound. We've been promising the Camp Kyle Sound all day long, and I'm a bad radio host, so we're just now giving it to you. James actually went up to practice and collected the sound. So what do we got, James?
Kyle Whittingham addressed the media. I figured that probably should be the first thing we play. Start off with the head coach. Also, really good conversation with Tobias Merriweather, a guy that a lot of people think could end up being Utah's number one receiver.
There are people in Salt Lake City who are hinging their happiness this fall on Tobias Merriweather working out or not. So let's do Kyle and then Tobias, and great idea. Let's go.
How would you assess kind of where your team's at now with pads and kind of the last week-ish?
Yeah, I think we're in a good place. Today was the first live work we've had. We had the opportunity to be in full gear for the first day. You have to go through the acclimatization period, and so we got through that. And today was a full padded day. We had maybe 50 snaps of live work and saw some really good things. Wayshawn Parker really had some nice physical runs. Knock Rogers as well. Devin moved first offense up and down the field, so a lot of good stuff. And you know, we've got a long ways to go, obviously, but we've got 19 more practices to get it done, and then we line up and play.
How would you assess the progress of the receiver room and that chemistry with the quarterback?
I'd say they've made big strides. Tobias Merriweather is really doing some good things. Tayshawn Lyons, or not Tayshawn Lyons, but Zip is doing some good things. J.J. Buchanan, he's not really a wide receiver, but he's playing a lot of flex tight end. He's really showing up and making his presence known. So that's been a big plus for us to have him step forward. But
has anyone emerged in the quarterback room just to get back in the spot?
Not yet. That's really a dead heat right now. Isaac is playing really well, and so is Bird. We're going to continue that. Hopefully not for a lot longer, but it's not the same urgency as if you were battling for QB1. We know who QB1 is, so that is the most important thing. But we're going to continue that QB2 battle at least through the scrimmage on Saturday, maybe beyond, depending on what happens next week.
Coach, getting back to the receivers, you said they were the biggest question mark in the camp. They less of a question mark now?
Less so, yeah, but still not a real true pecking order. We're starting to get some semblance of it and some idea, but we need to really see some extensive live work on Saturday to make a decision.
Has there been any separation in the corners room opposite Scooby?
Well, we got 3 or 4 guys that are right in the mix, and so I would say It's down to 3 or 4 guys opposite Scooby, but it's going to be a battle for that. We may end up playing, by committee and having rotation. We'll see how it goes. But it's very competitive. When you got 3 or 4 guys that are playing at a very high level, it's not we're waiting for someone to step up and play at that level. We got 3 or 4 guys doing a really good job. No one's just really separated themselves yet.
In spring, you said Jackson Benny was really coming on strong. Does that help you push Smith outside a little bit more?
It gives us that flexibility because Jackson is operating in the nickel spot a lot. But if we had to play tomorrow, it would be Smith inside at the nickel, but Smith is getting a ton of work on the outside during these early stages of fall camp, so in case we get to that in the fall.
You signed the tight end Jefferson as part of the 2025 class. Is there any chance he plays this year?
We're still waiting on eligibility ruling, and so if he is deemed eligible, that would depend when that happens, as far as how soon we can integrate him into what we're doing. If it takes longer rather than shorter, then maybe looking at a redshirt year. And if he doesn't get eligible at all, then he's got the option to either redshirt back home in his junior college or play his junior college season. So still a lot of what ifs on that.
How are the young defensive tackles looking so far?
Really good, really good. Those guys are stars of the future. We got 5 of them, and they're all lining up against the ones and doing a good job.
So optimism from Kyle Whittingham, shouting out a couple of different guys, maybe names that you've heard before, names that you didn't expect to hear potentially in there as well. Buchanan, good for you, right?
Yeah. By the way, Hunter Andrews, who we could probably skip that one, didn't give us a ton from yesterday, but he also shouted out fellow tight end / flex wide receiver J.J. Buchanan. So he got a couple of shout-outs yesterday.
Good to see that. Good to hear that. And, of course, when it really matters is when you roll out whatever the offense looks like at UCLA, but you're establishing that pecking order now. Let's hear from Tobias Merriweather. This is the guy that a lot of folks think could be wide receiver number 1. Of course, the guy you thought was going to be wide receiver number 1 transferred out after the spring. So now you're looking for that body potentially. Is he the one? Take a listen.
Well, as you come in the spring transfer portal period, what's the acclimation period been like for you and just being able to kind of show your talent?
Yeah, I think I've transferred before, obviously, so I think I'm kind of familiar with how it goes and all the new stuff you have to get used to and the offense and stuff. They do a good job of teaching us new stuff and getting me acclimated, and everyone's so welcoming, and it's great to be here.
What was their message to you when they were recruiting you to come to Utah this time around?
Just come make a difference. That's really what it came down to. Come make a difference for us, come be a threat for us, and yeah.
What has your chemistry been like with Devin Dibb here?
I think it's been good so far. We made a lot of big plays on the offense. We made some easy, consistent plays, but I think it's been good so far. Throughout the first 5-6 days of camp.
What are your thoughts on Jason Beck's offense and how you've been able to kind of acclimate within it?
Yeah, he runs a very I would say weird style of offense. The way they just do stuff is just not what's the normal offense for, especially in college. But I think it works great, especially for new guys, and we're able to just come in quick, get it down, and run it.
You've played at this level before, but what are you hoping to get out of it this year, knowing that you still got a lot to prove?
Yeah, I think obviously my goal has always been since I was young, to go to the NFL, and that's still what the case is. And I think here's a good place where I can do that.
How comfortable are you with this Utah offense so far?
I think very comfortable. I think I picked up pretty quickly. I feel like I have a good football brain, so it's kind of come second nature to me. But I think guys like RD have done a good job of helping me also get in Utah offense.
How's your relationship with Coach Mike Simon?
I think it's great. He's a young guy, and he's really cool. I've had all sorts of coaches. I've had older coaches, a younger coach. So I think it's been cool to have him. He's kind of chill, but he will make sure we're coaching us well, and he's good with the drill work too.
Gerber, I guess, and the other members of the wide receiver group kind of look to establish themselves as the number 1, number 2, number 3 wide receivers.
Yeah, I don't think really. Everyone kind of thinks that in the back of their head, but really in the front of my brain is not really, becoming number 1, number 2, number 3, whatever that is. It's just coming out, being consistent every day, and worry about the process more than the result.
How has someone like Ryan Davis, who was a part of this offense last year, maybe helped you transition into this offense?
Critical. He's a leader in our room. He comes to work every day and he does it, and then he tells us what to do, and you can watch it, and then he'll ask him questions, and we're just going back and forth. I think both of us are kind of on the older side of college, so we're both able to use our brains and be able to see what we can do and how to manipulate the defense.
How would you evaluate this running or wide receiver room? What do you think it is right now?
I think top down we have like every type of receiver. We have older guys who are just like third down, whatever, consistent guys down low. We have guys that can take it deep. We have guys that can do everything. We have younger guys, older guys. Everyone's getting in the mix. So I think it's a good mix of guys, and we all come to work every day.
What's going to be the key for you this season in terms of establishing yourself and taking that next step in your game?
I think, like I said, just worrying about the process, not worrying about what happens on Saturdays, what happens at practice. Just worry about the process every day, coming in, watching film, making sure I know the plays, making sure I know what I'm doing, and just working on the process.
What was it about Utah that was an attractive to you?
Yeah, I think just like I said earlier, just the ability to make a difference. That's really what I'm looking for, just to be in an offense that wants me to be here and wants me to be featured.
How much have you caught on to kind of the mindset of this team didn't like what it was last year?
Yeah.
I know you weren't here last year, but how do you kind of buy into that?
I think it's easy. I was on a team that didn't win a lot of games last year, and I think nobody likes to lose. And I think coming with Coach Witt, he's a winner, and that's what I love. I love winners. I love the around winners because they make you better.
Tobias Merriweather got a good football brain. This offense is allegedly, I've never had to learn it, but a lot of the guys, the offensive linemen that we've talked to have said this. Wayshawn Parker said this, a digestible type offense with that was one of the issues some people had, don't count me among them, but was one of the issues that some people had with Andy Ludwig's offense. There were some high-minded pro concepts in there that made it harder for transfer players, incoming players, freshmen that weren't necessarily the bookish types in order to really integrate themselves rapidly into the offense. And that should not be a problem with what Jason Beck is running.
Yeah, and especially for someone who claims to have a good football brain like Tobias Merriweather, that was a good line from him there. I thought it was a pretty good mic drop moment at the end there too, where he said, "Kyle Whittingham's a winner. I love playing with winners because it makes you better." And I mean that certainly is quite the endorsement for someone like Kyle Whittingham, from a transfer player who played on the West Coast and other places. For him to have said, "Hey, I picked this program because I saw the head coach was a guy not only knew football and could coach me to be a better player, but he's a winner." And so I thought that was a really good line from him too.
All right, we got to take our last break. We'll come back. We'll give away some tickets. All Time Low is the band. They're at the Union on October 16th. A pair of tickets next if you can answer our trivia question. Big thanks to James for getting that sound yesterday. To Jerry Seiner Cadillac, S&S Roofing, the Steel Vault, Sound Warehouse, Culligan Water, Outlaw Distillery, and all of our Camp Kyle sponsors here on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Sean O'Connell Show, wrapping things up here. I've got some tickets to All-Time Low, 877-353-0700. If you can answer today's trivia question, we set the over-under today on interceptions thrown by the University of Utah. The projection for 2025 I set was 11.5, over or under. Last year, Devin Dampier threw 12 at New Mexico, and the Utah offense threw 17, which ranked what in the Big 12 Conference in their debut year as a Big 12 Conference member. Where did Utah's offense rank in interceptions thrown in the Big 12 last year? 877-353-0700 for 2 tickets to All-Time Low coming up on October 16th. Yes, the Union on October 16th. Spence Checketts and the Drive are coming up next. Hey, Spence.
Sean, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing great.
Question for you.
All right.
So I'm coming from the dentist.
Uh-huh.
Novocaine's almost worn off.
Oh, nice.
Had to have a crown put on.
Okay.
It's like my most unfavorite thing.
Yeah, dentist is tough.
Has been since I was like a kid. Got to do it, though. You'll learn a hard lesson, take a few years off, then suddenly thousands of dollars, you got to fix the things.
Yeah.
What's the equivalent? Like, if I asked you the one way you do not want to spend your morning, because the answer for me might be the dentist chair. Now, we can get weird and say jail cell, whatever.
The dentist chair is way up there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a top 3 probably for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you one that I had to do recently.
Mm-hmm.
Cell phone store.
Oh, that's an underrated answer.
It is so aggravating.
Yep.
How long that process takes.
No matter what they say, plan on being there for multiple hours. Like, you go in there, be like, yeah, 20, 30 minutes. Boom. 2.5 hours later, you're still there.
It is.
That's a good answer.
It is insane.
Yeah.
My old phone did the thing where it won't charge anymore. You know.
Oh, Apple's saying it's time for you to pay us more money.
Yeah, the charging port just no longer reads that there's anything plugged into it.
Mm-hmm.
And you have about 3 to 6 months where you can kind of like force the pressure, do the angle, clean the lint out and stuff. But eventually the engineered obsolescence will take place.
You got to do it. Yep.
So I went in, did my duty as a tech consumer, and I got my new iPhone. And I was like, okay, that's the one I want. That's my plan. I'd like to leave now. Took 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And like a moron, I took my 3.5-year-old, and she was lovely. She was wonderful. But she's just like, Dad, what are we doing?
Uh-huh.
I'm like, go look at the cases again and tell me which one you like best. And I'm looking at the person who's doing the selling, and I'm just like, there's no, like, you can't upsell me on anything. I want the same plan. I'll give you my old phone. Give me that new one. It should take 10 minutes.
I'm glad you have Netflix for free, but I'm fine. Thank you very much. I don't need any more data. And both of these experiences, dentist, cell phone purchase, they have something in common. Unless I'm missing something, we haven't evolved much with these processes. Like, we're still doing the drill with the dentist. Like, I hear the drill, and I just feel like more progress should have been made. Because when I hear that drill, even before it enters the mouth, when I hear the drill, I just
the high-pitched whine.
Yes, my whole body tenses up. And I have a good dentist. He's a good friend. He's a big sports fan, good golfer. So I'm not knocking on him. But whether it's data transfer at a cell phone store or drilling teeth at the dentist, we've progressed in so many ways in society. I feel like these two experiences are still stuck in the mud.
I've become a curmudgeon with things that take long and shouldn't take long because, time is at a premium when you're working 3 jobs and you have small children and all that stuff. And you're just like, I don't want to spend my afternoon sitting here at the fill in your cell phone provider store.
I'm with you. The other thing that, and I really, it's like the old Arrested Development line. I'm not blaming it on 9/11, but it certainly didn't help. I'm not blaming this on COVID, but it certainly didn't help. The customer service experience when you call anything, anybody, anywhere to try to get somebody on the phone. COVID, the bureaucracy of COVID allowed people to be like, yeah, it's COVID. No one's here. We can't answer the phone. And now the implementation of AI, like if you call any sort of credit card company, cell phone service, cable company, just to get a human on the phone feels impossible these days. And now it's never been a seamless process. And look, I always keep in mind these folks are doing this for a living, so I certainly am never rude to somebody who's on the phone. But getting somebody on the phone just to talk about the most mundane, tiny detail that needs to be taken care of, doesn't it feel like we're moving in the wrong direction with that?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're on hold forever.
I got a bill. I got a cable bill the other day.
Uh-huh.
That's, my cable and internet or whatever.
Yeah.
Was double the normal price.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, why is it double the normal price? So I logged into my account,
mm-hmm.
and it's because the automatic draft, like the automatic payment, didn't get withdrawn last month.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, why not? Because the card is not expired. They just didn't charge me last month, so they wanted to charge me double this month.
Mm-hmm.
Which, whatever, it all nets out the same. But I'm like, wait, why? Why did that happen?
Yeah.
Why are they doing that? Because there's got to be something behind it.
Yeah.
That's going to screw me over at some point.
Not to be a one-upper, but, and I do not want to say the company out loud because it's a local company. I have, like you and kids, here's some financial advice. Automate everything. Therefore, you don't have late fees and payments missed. So automate everything. There's a company that I have a service through locally that every 6 months they do what you just said the cable company did, where they just don't take the payment out of the bank account. And I've been in business with them for like 4 years now. And it happens like clockwork every 6 months. And their excuse is they change systems. But what it allows them to do is charge you a late fee because you missed the payment. I didn't miss the payment.
You missed the payment.
You didn't take it out of my account. We have an agreement that this is automated. And it's an hour on the phone. It's like, hey, look, it's $20. At the end of the day, like, I think you're probably the same way. I'll take an hour of my day over $20, right? Give me my hour back. But don't just do this every 6 months and then be like, duh, I don't know, change systems again. Like clockwork. No one's protecting the consumer. That's my point today.
Yell at the clouds with us, everyone.
Yes, please do.
Before I let you go.
Yep.
Or before I let myself go, because you have a 4-hour show to
Indeed.
do. Over under 11.5 interceptions thrown for Utah's offense, which will be Devin Dampier.
I'm going to go over 12 last year in New Mexico.
Okay.
Coach Witt, and we do have some new sound, talked about the wide receivers today. We've been waiting, and he's giving us names. I am going to be the guy, and I'm not usually this guy, but I'm going to be the guy that's going to be very hesitant to anoint this team after I've seen them play for a couple. Like I say this every year, observation, not conclusion. For me, 3 to 4 weeks, and then boom, let's get non-con behind us. The non-con for Utah isn't that tough this year, and then let's kind of understand exactly what we're looking at. But based off of all of the unknowns, like. The thing about the past couple of years, we knew who Cameron Rising was. We knew, like, the majority of this team coming back offensively, what they had. I still don't know, and I'm not sure that anybody does. So I'll go over, but only because I'm just skeptical based off of all the things about this team I don't know.
By the way, over puts you in the bottom half of the conference last year. Under puts you in the top. You tied for 7th. There's like a 3-4. It would have been a 4-way tie for 7th. So we'll see how it plays out.
If they're a middle-of-the-road Big 12 offensive team, I think it's a win.
Because we know the conference championship game, probably.
Exactly.
That's the conclusion we keep coming to on these offensive numbers.
No doubt.
Show. All right. Stay tuned for The Drive. Thanks for listening today. We'll do it again tomorrow on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network.